Hello everyone, I'm here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep, so before that, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching? Now get comfortable and relax. The morning mist clung to the rugged hillside like a shroud as the excavation team arrived at the remote dig site. Nestled in a forgotten valley of crumbling stone and gnarled trees, the ruins of an ancient temple loomed as silent witnesses to a bygone civilization. The chill in the air was heavy with mystery and the scent of earth that had slept undisturbed for centuries. Here, amid twisted vines and weathered carvings, the promise of lost history beckoned, along with a darkness no one could yet imagine. Dr. Alicia Monroe led the team with a mix of scholarly passion and cautious determination. In her worn leather jacket and sturdy boots, she moved gracefully between the exposed walls of the ruin, her eyes alight with the thrill of discovery and the burden of responsibility. Today's expedition, organized with meticulous care, was meant to be another routine survey of the area. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. Marcus Mark Duval, a veteran field archaeologist whose weathered face bore silent testimony to both triumphs and regrets, followed closely behind her. His gaze was alert and wary, as if the ancient stones whispered secrets only he could partly decipher. Though normally a pillar of stoic rationality, a shadow of personal guilt lingered in his eyes, a history he rarely spoke of, but which haunted his every step. Layla Sanchez, a bright and eager graduate student specializing in ancient languages and symbols, trailed alongside, her camera and notebooks clutched tightly. Every intricate carving and faded inscription was a potential key to the past, and she was determined to unlock every secret. Her curiosity was tempered by an innate sensitivity to the unseen, making her both an asset and, at times, a vulnerable conduit for the energies lingering in the ruins. Evan Price, the pragmatic logistics manager of the dig, worked behind the scenes to ensure every detail was in place. With a practical mind and an even temperament, he was often the voice of reason when the team's enthusiasm threatened to outpace caution. Yet even he couldn't shake the odd feeling that the day's events were moving beyond mere academic interest. It was near noon when Alicia's team began their routine brush and trowel work near a collapsed section of the temple's inner sanctum. The area was littered with fragments of pottery and stone tablets, all bearing the weight of long-lost rituals. As Alicia gently swept away the layers of dust and dirt, her trowel struck something unusually hard, a smooth, cold surface unlike the rough, porous stone surrounding it. "Mark, come here for a minute," Alicia called softly, her voice betraying a note of disbelief. Mark joined her, crouching beside the uncovered object. There, partially embedded in the earth, was an exquisitely carved artifact. Its surface was unlike anything they had seen, a delicate interplay of swirling lines and angular symbols that seemed to shimmer with an inner luminescence in the muted light. The artifact was oval in shape, about the size of a human palm, and was framed by filigree that hinted at both elegance and a deeper, ominous purpose. Layla's eyes widened as she examined the relic. This is extraordinary," she breathed almost in a whisper. "The craftsmanship is impeccable, yet the symbols, they're not from any known script. They resemble nothing in our current catalogs, almost as if they belong to an entirely lost language." She snapped several photos, her fingers trembling with excitement. Evan approached with a clipboard in hand, his analytical gaze fixed on the object. "We need to secure this immediately," he said, his tone all business. "If we can extract it safely, we might have a breakthrough here." His words, though practical, did little to mask the underlying tension that now crackled in the air. Alicia carefully lifted the artifact from its earthen bed, cradling it as if it were a living thing. In that moment, a chill seemed to seep from its surface, sending a shiver down her spine. The intricate patterns appeared to dance in the low light, and for a brief second, she thought she could hear a faint, rhythmic hum, a sound that might have been the wind, or something far less benign. As the team gathered around, their earlier excitement gave way to a creeping sense of unease. Mark's normally composed face darkened as he murmured, "I've seen omens before, but nothing like this. It feels off." His hand brushed against the artifact, and he recoiled as if struck by an invisible force. Layla, ever the scholar, attempted to analyze the carvings on the spot. The symbol seemed to merge elements of geometric precision with swirling organic forms, she explained. There's a disturbing harmony to them, as though they were meant to balance beauty and horror in equal measure. Her voice wavered with a mix of academic awe and a deeper, unspoken fear. Evan checked his instruments, his brow furrowing as he noted irregular electromagnetic readings emanating from the artifact. "I'm picking up something strange on the sensors, fluctuations that suggest an energy we can't quite define," he reported. "It's as if this thing is alive, or at least resonating with some kind of power." Alicia's eyes met theirs, and for a moment, the jovial camaraderie of the team was replaced by a profound silence. The artifact, resting in her gloved hands, felt heavier than it ought to be, a weight that extended beyond mere physical mass. It was as if it carried a burden of its own, a curse that was woven into its very essence. "Secure it in a lead-lined container," Alicia ordered, her voice firm but betraying an inner tremor. "We're taking this back to the lab for a full analysis. And no one touches it without my permission." The directive was met with nods of agreement, though each team member's eyes betrayed their own unspoken apprehensions. As the artifact was carefully wrapped and transported back to the temporary research facility set up near the site, the day wore on with an undercurrent of quiet dread. That evening, as the team gathered in the makeshift lab, a converted tent filled with research equipment, books, and the hum of computers, the artifact was placed in a secure display case. The room was dimly lit, and the artifact's surface seemed to pulse subtly in the half-light, as if reacting to the collective tension of those around it. Over dinner that night, conversation hesitated between academic excitement and an unarticulated fear. Mark stared into his cup, his thoughts clearly elsewhere, while Layla's questions became more pointed. Could it be that this relic is not just an object of beauty, but a vessel, a container for something? Dark? Her voice was tentative, as if testing a boundary she was not sure she should cross. Evan, ever the skeptic, offered a practical counterpoint. "We've seen artifacts before that were rumored to be cursed, just old superstitions, nothing more. Until we have evidence of actual harm, we should treat this as an archaeological find." Yet even he could not entirely mask the tremor in his voice. Alicia listened to the debate, her mind racing through the possibilities. She recalled legends of cursed objects in ancient texts, relics that carried the wrath of gods or the malice of vengeful spirits, doomed to bring misfortune to those who dared to disturb their eternal slumber. The artifact before them, with its unsettling beauty and enigmatic energy, seemed to fit the description all too well. That night, as the others retired to their tents, Alicia remained in the lab, poring over her notes and the artifact's preliminary readings. The soft glow from her computer screen cast long shadows on the walls, and the artifact's faint hum seemed to merge with the distant sounds of the wilderness outside. She found herself unable to shake the feeling that, somehow, this discovery was the beginning of something far more sinister than any academic breakthrough, a harbinger of a curse that could reach far beyond the confines of insight. In the stillness of the night, Alicia's thoughts wandered to old stories of cursed treasures and the tragic fates of those who had once possessed them. A chill crept over her as she realized that the artifact might be a bridge, a portal between a forgotten, malignant past and a present that was about to be irrevocably altered. The air in the lab grew colder, and for a moment, she swore she heard a whisper, a single, soft syllable that might have been her imagination or something far more ominous. The first day of the uneventful dig had transformed into a turning point, one that would set the stage for a descent into darkness. With the cursed artifact now in their custody, the team stood at the threshold of a mystery that promised to test their beliefs, their sanity, and their very survival. As the moon rose high over the silent ruins, the artifact sat enclosed in its case, a beautiful, terrible relic that pulsed with a life of its own. And in that quiet moment, Alicia knew that the journey had only just begun. The curse was awakening, and with it, a new chapter of horror and despair would soon be written into the annals of their lives. In the days to come, as the team continued their work under the looming shadow of the artifact, each member would come to confront their deepest fears and the possibility that some discoveries were best left undisturbed. For now, however, the unearthed relic was all they had, a cursed artifact whose dark legacy promised to change everything. And so, in the quiet pre-dawn hours, with the ruins bathed in the silver glow of a watchful moon, the cursed artifact awaited its fate, its curse, its secrets, and the uncharted path of terror that would soon ensnare them all. Later that night, after the team had returned to camp and the artifact was secured in its lead-lined case, Alicia found herself unable to sleep. The soft glow of her desk lamp danced along stacks of field notes and sensor printouts, but her mind was elsewhere, lost in a restless labyrinth of thoughts about the relic. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw those intricate carvings shifting in the darkness, as if alive with a secret language. Unable to shake the feeling that the artifact was calling to her, Alicia rose from her cot and made her way back to the temporary research facility. The structure, a sturdy, repurposed tent complex strung with harsh electric lights, offered little shelter from the night's penetrating chill. In a quiet corner of the lab, she sat down before a secure workbench and carefully opened the case. The artifact lay there, resting on a velvet cushion, its surface almost eerily still. Yet, as she leaned closer, she could have sworn that the pattern seemed to shimmer ever so slightly, catching the low light in an unearthly dance. Her fingers hovered over the relic's cool surface. For a long, silent moment, the only sound was the steady drip of water from a leaky pipe somewhere in the facility. Then, as if stirred by her presence, a faint hum, barely audible, seemed to emanate from the artifact itself. Alicia's heart quickened. Had the hum always been there, or was it a new, unsettling development? She retrieved her digital recorder and whispered, "This is Dr. Alicia Monroe. I'm documenting an anomaly observed in the artifact's ambient emission. There appears to be a low-frequency hum, almost like a heartbeat." Her voice trembled just enough to betray the unease she felt. As she played back the recording, the hum took on an almost rhythmic quality, a soft, persistent pulse that resonated with something deep within her. Alicia's thoughts wandered to the ancient texts she'd read in preparation for this dig. Tales of cursed relics, vessels from malevolent forces, and omens that foretold doom for those who disturbed them. The notion had once seemed like fanciful superstition, yet now, confronted with this mysterious artifact, she could no longer dismiss it out of hand. Outside, the night wore on, and the rest of the team slept fitfully, their dreams no doubt haunted by the day's astonishing discovery. But Alicia remained at her workbench, her eyes fixed on the relic. Every so often, she caught a glimpse of movement at the edge of her vision, a subtle distortion in the air, like heat rising off a desert road. She blinked, and it was gone, leaving her to wonder if fatigue was playing tricks on her mind. At some point, a soft knock at the lab door broke the silence. Startled, Alicia looked up. It was Mark, his face etched with concern. "Alicia, are you still up?" "I couldn't sleep either. I kept having these unsettling dreams." His voice was low, and there was an intensity in his eyes that she'd rarely seen. She gestured for him to sit beside her. "I've been examining the artifact," she confessed. "There's something in its hum, a pulse that feels almost alive, and I can't shake the feeling that it's connected to my dreams." Mark frowned, his rugged features softening as he took in her words. "I've seen omens before, Alicia. When I touched the relic earlier, I felt something, a cold surge that went straight to my core. I tried to rationalize it, but now, I'm not so sure. His tone was measured, but the tremor in his voice betrayed a deeper, unspoken fear. The two sat in silence for a long moment, the only sound the soft, unrelenting pulse from the artifact. Outside, the wind began to pick up, rattling the plastic panels of the makeshift lab. In the dim light, Alicia swore she saw the carved patterns on the relic ripple and shift, as if responding to the rising gusts of wind. Alicia, Mark said gently, do you think it's possible that this artifact isn't just a relic of a lost civilization, but a container for something else? His question hung in the air, heavy with implications. She swallowed hard. I don't know, she admitted, but I'm beginning to suspect that its discovery might not be a blessing at all, but a warning, a harbinger of something that was meant to remain undisturbed. Mark nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on the artifact. We need to document everything, but we also need to be cautious. If there's even a hint of a curse, we can't allow pride or academic ambition to put us in harm's way. His eyes met hers, filled with both determination and concern. Before long, the two researchers agreed to gather their notes and check in with the rest of the team in the morning. As they left the lab together, the hum of the artifact continued to echo softly in Alicia's ears, a persistent, unnerving reminder that their discovery was only the beginning of something far more complex and dangerous. Out on the cool, dewy air of the pre-dawn hours, Alicia took a deep breath, steeling herself against the uncertain future. The ancient ruins, the artifact, and the whispered legends of curses were all converging on this singular moment. And as she looked up at the star-filled sky, she couldn't help but feel that somewhere in the vast darkness beyond, an unseen force was watching, waiting for the time when its long-held secret would finally be revealed. With the first hints of dawn breaking over the horizon, Alicia and Mark returned to their tents, each carrying the weight of their unspoken fears and the burden of an unknown curse. The artifact, now securely stored in the lab, pulsed quietly as if in anticipation of the coming day, a day that would force them to confront the true nature of what they had unearthed. And so, in that silent, fragile moment between night and day, the stage was set. The cursed artifact had been discovered, its dark legacy just beginning to stir. Unbeknownst to them, the threads of fate were already weaving a tapestry of horror and destiny that would soon envelop them all, drawing them inexorably into an uncharted path of terror, a path from which there might be no return. The first light of dawn brought with it a fragile optimism that belied the undercurrent of dread left behind by the night's discoveries. As the team stirred awake at camp, the crisp morning air seemed to whisper secrets among the ancient stones. In the makeshift research facility, the atmosphere was heavy with anticipation. The cursed artifact, now secured in a lead-line display case, rested silently on a sturdy wooden table, its intricate carvings illuminated by the soft glow of a single lamp. Dr. Alicia Monroe arrived early, determined to start the day with careful observation. With measured steps, she approached the case and peered through the glass. The artifact's surface, previously noticed for its delicate interplay of swirling and angular motifs, now appeared to shimmer subtly, as if alive. Its enigmatic symbols, so unlike any known language, seemed to shift ever so slightly when viewed from different angles. Alicia's pulse quickened. She knew that if this relic had chosen to reveal its secrets, it would do so in whispers and shadows, not in blatant declarations. Across the room, Layla Sanchez busied herself with scanning the artifact from every angle. Her graduate studies in ancient languages had prepared her for puzzles like this, but nothing in her. Textbooks had mentioned a relic that might emit its own faint hum, a rhythmic pulse that could almost be mistaken for a heartbeat. She adjusted the camera lens, snapping high-resolution images of the surface. "There's a mesmerizing quality to these inscriptions," she murmured, her voice a mix of scholarly wonder and uneasy fascination. "They seem designed to balance both order and Marcus Duval, ever the skeptic with a haunted past, joined them quietly. He examined the artifact with a furrowed brow, running his hand near the case's surface without actually touching it. "I felt something strange when I handled it yesterday," he confessed in a low tone. "A cold surge that made me want to pull back immediately, as if the relic was trying to warn me." His eyes, dark and reflective, hinted at memories best left undisturbed. Evan Price, the pragmatic backbone of the operation, reviewed his sensor readings on a tablet. "The electromagnetic fluctuations are still off the charts," he reported, his voice measured. "Whatever energy the artifact holds, it isn't static. It fluctuates, almost like it's communicating or reacting to something in our environment." His scientific tone was interspersed with a trace of apprehension he couldn't quite mask. As the team gathered for a morning briefing, Alicia outlined the day's plan. "Today, we'll conduct a series of controlled tests on the artifact," she announced, her gaze steady. "Layla, you'll continue with the high-resolution imagery and attempt to decode the inscriptions. Marcus, I'd like you to document any physical sensations or unusual responses you might have. Evan, keep monitoring the sensor readings closely. We need to understand if this relic is truly inanimate or if, against all logic, it has a life of its own." The team dispersed to their tasks with a blend of scientific enthusiasm and cautious trepidation. In a quiet corner of the facility, Alicia sat before a laptop loaded with ancient texts and comparative symbol databases. She cross-referenced the artifact's markings with those found in obscure historical records, accounts of forbidden rituals, cursed treasures, and ominous legends of a vengeful deity from a long-forgotten civilization. Every new piece of data only deepened the mystery. The symbols seemed to be a patchwork, a synthesis of geometric precision interwoven with organic, almost chaotic flourishes that defied conventional categorization. Meanwhile, Layla's fingers flew over her keyboard as she attempted to match patterns and sounds with the inscriptions captured in her photographs. Over several hours, her initial excitement gradually gave way to a cautious concern. "These symbols," she whispered to herself, "they hint at a ritual of balance, a covenant between the forces of creation and destruction. And there's something about the way they're arranged. It's as if the artifact is both a key and a lock." Her words, recorded on a digital notebook, would later form the basis of her preliminary report. Marcus retreated to a quiet corner of the camp to document his experiences. Seated at a battered desk, he wrote slowly, almost laboriously, about the sensations he had experienced the previous day. He recalled the sudden, piercing chill that had coursed through his veins the moment his skin brushed the relic surface. In his journal, he noted, "There is a presence here, a cold, unyielding force that seems to reach out and pull at the edges of my memory. It is as if the artifact harbors a secret burden, a sorrow too profound to be forgotten." His writing, laced with personal confession, hinted at demons from a past he had long tried to bury. Throughout the day, Evan's instruments continued to record erratic energy spikes. Every so often, the readings would surge, then subside into a lull that was unnervingly rhythmic. "It's almost like the artifact is breathing," he remarked to Alicia, his tone betraying both scientific curiosity and a growing sense of foreboding. As afternoon turned to dusk, the laboratory's atmosphere shifted. The artifact, which had sat in quiet observation under artificial light, now seemed to pulse with a subtle internal rhythm when illuminated by the soft amber glow of the setting sun. Alicia and Layla gathered around the display case, their eyes fixed on the relic as if trying to decipher its silent message. "Do you feel that?" Layla asked softly, her voice trembling. "It's as though the artifact is resonating with something. I can almost hear a whisper, a language not meant for human ears." Alicia's expression was grave as she nodded in agreement. The quiet hum they had all sensed earlier seemed to swell into a gentle, yet insistent, vibration that filled the room with an almost hypnotic cadence. The day ended with a mix of exhaustion and deep, unspoken worry. In the communal dining area, The team's conversation was subdued, punctuated by long pauses and reflective silence. Even Evan, who usually dismissed superstitions with a practiced air of detachment, couldn't help but glance at his sensors with apprehension as he recounted the latest anomalies. Later that night, as the camp settled into an uneasy slumber under a sky strewn with cold, indifferent stars, Alicia remained awake in the lab. She reviewed her notes and the data collected throughout the day, her mind swirling with questions. Was the artifact truly a simple relic, or was it the vessel for a long-dormant curse? The legends she had read whispered of cursed treasures that exacted a terrible price on those who uncovered them, a price that often went far beyond material loss. In the silence of the night, as the wind sighed mournfully through the camp and the artifact's faint hum intermingled with the rustle of leaves, Alicia felt a shiver creep over her skin. It was as if the relic was trying to communicate, a silent plea or perhaps a dire warning from an age-long past. Somewhere in the depths of its intricate carvings, she sensed a dark secret waiting to be unearthed, a secret that might unravel the very fabric of their reality. As she finally prepared to retire, Alicia glanced once more at the artifact, its surface now bathed in the gentle glow of the lab's emergency lights. In that moment, she knew that the unearthed relic was not merely an academic curiosity. It was a harbinger, a cursed artifact whose dark legacy was just beginning to stir. And though she could not yet see the full scope of the terror it might unleash, one truth was undeniable. Their discovery had set them on a path from which there might be no return. In the hush of that pre-dawn hour, with the camp quiet and the artifact's hum echoing softly in her ears, Alicia recorded a final note. The curse has awakened. May we have the strength to face what comes next. And as the darkness slowly yielded to the first blush of dawn, the team's lives were forever bound to the mysterious relic, a binding that would soon test their courage, their friendship, and the very limits of human understanding. The pale light of early dawn had barely begun to break when subtle disturbances first made themselves known. Although the team had spent the night processing the discovery in relative silence, an undercurrent of unease had already begun to permeate the camp. In the hours following the pre-dawn vigil, strange murmurs seemed to ride the cold wind, a soft susurration that no one could quite place, as if the very air was laden with secrets too heavy for daylight. Alicia was the first to notice. While reviewing the previous night's data in the lab, she paused at a gap in the sensor readings. There, on the edge of the electromagnetic logs, a series of faint, irregular spikes pulsed in a pattern that resembled whispered syllables. Her fingers drummed nervously on the desk as she rewound the recording, straining to decipher the cadence. For a moment, the hum of the cursed artifact merged with an indistinct, ghostly resonance, a quiet murmur that sent a chill down her spine. Across the camp, Mark awoke in a cold sweat. Dreams had plagued him during the night, fragmented visions of dark corridors, desperate whispers echoing in endless voids, and a spectral presence that seemed to beckon him toward hidden depths of sorrow and regret. As he sat up in his tent, the remnants of his nightmare clung to him like a second skin. In those half-remembered scenes, he had seen himself, or perhaps someone else, standing at the threshold of a dark portal, the cursed relic pulsing in time with an otherworldly heartbeat. The images were so vivid that he could still feel the icy surge of that inexplicable force. With a heavy heart, Mark resolved to document every detail of these nocturnal terrors. Layla, too, found herself disturbed by the morning. While examining her photographs from the previous night, she noted that in several of the close-up images of the artifact, faint reflections of figures, shadowy, indistinct shapes, appeared behind its intricate carvings. At first, she dismissed them as a trick of the light or a flaw in the lens. But as she compared image after image, the unsettling realization set in. The artifact might be projecting its own echo, or perhaps inviting something from the void. Her hands trembled slightly as she reprocessed the images, trying desperately to isolate the phenomenon. In the quiet of her tent, the silence seemed suddenly oppressive, punctuated by the faint, persistent echo of an unrecognizable voice that only she could perceive. Evan, the ever-practical manager, found his instruments behaving erratically. His calibrated sensors, which had already registered the artifact's fluctuating energy, now began to pick up low-level frequencies that he couldn't explain, intermittent bursts of static, like the faint echo of an incantation murmur in an ancient shaman. He double-checked his equipment and traced measurements, but the inexplicable signals persisted, growing more insistent as the morning wore on. By mid-morning, the atmosphere in the camp had shifted noticeably. The initial scientific curiosity had given way to a more subdued, almost fearful silence. In the communal dining area, conversation was sparse. Each team member seemed lost in their own private dread, their eyes reflecting the weight of an unseen burden. Even the usually lighthearted banter that accompanied their shared meals was replaced by uneasy glances and hushed tones. Alicia convened an emergency meeting in the lab, her voice steady despite the apprehension that underpinned every word. "I've been reviewing the sensor data and the audio recordings from last night," she began, gesturing to the graph displayed on her monitor. "There's something happening here that we can't ignore, a series of irregular spikes, almost as if the artifact is trying to speak. And there's an underlying murmur, a whisper that seems to resonate with the symbols on its surface." She paused, her eyes scanning the worried faces of her colleagues. "I believe we need to increase our observation. We must document these occurrences carefully and see if they follow any sort of pattern." Mark, still shaken by his nightmare, added in a low voice, "In my dreams, I saw a vast darkness, a void, with the artifact at its center. I heard voices, pleading and accusing. I can't say for certain, but I'm starting to feel that this relic is more than just a piece of lost art. It might be a doorway, an invitation, or a warning from something ancient." Layla's voice quivered as she shared her findings. "My photos, they're not simply capturing the artifact. In several frames, I can see what looks like reflections of figures behind it. I've enhanced the images, and while it could be a lens flare, the consistency across different shots makes me wonder if something is there with us." Her words hung in the air, a stark counterpoint to Evan's rational insistence that the phenomena were merely glitches in their equipment. Evan, reviewing the latest sensor outputs on his tablet, nodded grimly. "I've run the test multiple times, and the anomalies are consistent. There's an energy signature here that I can't account for. It's as if the relic is resonating with something in the environment, or even with something inside us." His pragmatic tone faltered under the weight of the unexplainable. The discussion continued, each team member contributing their observations as the evidence of a night's disturbances accumulated. The lab became a hive of hushed urgency and cautious theorizing. They pored over ancient texts and cross-referenced folklore about cursed relics, a litany of warnings that seemed to echo their own mounting fears. The legends spoke of artifacts that, when unearthed, carried with them the whispers of an ancient malice, a force that preyed on human frailty and sought to unravel the fabric of reality itself. As the meeting drew to a close, Alicia's final words resonated in the dim light. "We're dealing with something that defies conventional explanation. For now, let's document everything meticulously. Stay alert and trust your instincts. If the artifact begins to act more aggressively, or if any of you experience further unsettling phenomena, report it immediately." Her eyes were stern yet compassionate, a beacon of resolve in a sea of uncertainty. Later that afternoon, as the team resumed their daily routines, the sense of foreboding only deepened. In the quiet moments between tasks, the whispers seemed to persist. Mark could almost hear a soft susurration at the edge of his thoughts, a voice that blended sorrow and warning. Layla, while poring over her photographs once again, felt as though unseen eyes were watching her every move. And in the background of it all, the cursed artifact pulsed imperceptibly, a silent heartbeat that hinted at a dark secret waiting to be unraveled. As dusk settled and the camp fell into a tentative calm, each member of the team retired with their own private fears. In the solitude of the night, the artifact's low hum was the last sound to lull them into restless sleep. But for some, sleep brought not rest but visions, glimpses of dark figures, twisted faces, and endless corridors of shadow. In those dreams, the whispers grew louder, forming a dissonant chorus that seemed to warn of what was yet to come. The night deepened, and in the darkness, the cursed relic continued its silent vigil. Unbeknownst to the team, the artifact was not idle. It was gathering the fragments of their fear and curiosity, preparing to unleash a power that would soon bind their fates to an ancient, malevolent legacy. And as the hours passed, the whispers in the dark promised that the true horror was only beginning to reveal itself. In the uneasy hush before dawn, the team's scattered reports, eerie dreams, and the persistent, otherworldly murmur of the artifact all converged into a single, chilling realization. The relic was not merely a lost treasure, but a cursed object, a vessel of dark energy whose awakening had set in motion forces that would test their courage, their bonds, and their very sanity. And so, as the first hints of dawn crept over the horizon, the whispers in the dark faded into a pregnant silence, a silence laden with dread and the foretaste of an uncertain future. The cursed artifact had begun its work, and the team was now irrevocably entwined with a destiny that would force them to confront the shadows both outside and within themselves. The uneasy hush that had settled over camp in the pre-dawn hours soon gave way to a series of disturbing events that shattered the fragile calm. As the first rays of sunlight crept over the horizon, the team emerged from their tents with heavy eyes and reluctant voices, each member still haunted by their own nightmares and the eerie echoes of the cursed artifact. The artifact, now locked away in its lead-lined case in the lab, continued to emit that low, persistent hum, a pulse that seemed to throb in time with the team's collective apprehension. Alicia was the first to notice that something was very wrong. During the morning's routine checks, she discovered that several pieces of field equipment, sensors, data loggers, even personal items, had inexplicably shifted their positions or registered anomalous readings overnight. In one instance, Evan's portable magnetometer, which had been carefully calibrated the previous evening, now displayed erratic spikes, as if influenced by a hidden, unseen force. With each inexplicable anomaly, the air grew heavier, charged with a palpable sense of foreboding. At breakfast, the conversation was sparse. Mark stared into his cup as if it held answers to questions he couldn't voice, while Layla quietly recounted the strange reflections captured on her photographs. Even Evan, typically the voice of pragmatism, had trouble dismissing the mounting evidence of something far beyond ordinary explanation. By mid-morning, Alicia gathered the team in the lab to review the latest data. Her voice was low and urgent as she addressed them. "I've been analyzing the sensor logs and reviewing the footage from last night," she began, eyes fixed on the computer screen. "There's a clear pattern of disturbance. Not only do the readings from the artifact's vicinity fluctuate wildly, but several instruments placed around camp, especially near the lab, are registering unexplained energy surges." Mark shifted uncomfortably. "I can't shake the feeling that these occurrences aren't isolated. In my dreams last night, I saw a vast, dark void with the artifact at its center. I heard voices, sorrowful, almost pleading. It felt like a warning, a curse trying to break free." His voice trailed off, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. Layla nodded, adding, "And in my photographs, I noticed faint outlines, almost as if shapes were moving behind the artifact. At first, I thought it was a lens artifact, but the consistency across different images tells me there's something there." Her hands trembled as she scrolled through her digital files, each image reinforcing her growing dread. Evan, reviewing the sensor data once again, interjected, "I've recalibrated the instruments, but nothing seems to stabilize. The electromagnetic fluctuations are not random. They're spiking at intervals that almost mimic a heartbeat. It's as if the artifact is trying to communicate, or worse, awaken something." His pragmatic tone wavered under the weight of the implications. Alicia took a deep breath, glancing at the artifact's case, its surface now reflecting the murky morning light. "The legends we've studied aren't just myth," she said quietly. "They speak of cursed objects that serve as vessels for ancient malevolence, entities that feed on fear and chaos. I'm beginning to think that what we've uncovered here isn't simply a relic, but a conduit. Its energy isn't confined to the object itself. It's permeating our surroundings." Outside the lab, the camp was in disarray. Some tents were left open as if abandoned in haste, while others bore signs of a struggle: torn fabric, scattered belongings, and a pervasive, inexplicable chill that seemed to settle even in the midday sun. In one unsettling instance, Mark found that his journal, which he had left on his bedside table, was now smeared with dark, inky stains that glistened wetly under the light. The writing on several pages had been disturbed, as though touched by unseen fingers. As the day wore on, the disturbances escalated. Unexplained shadows flitted along the perimeter of the camp at dusk, and an eerie, low moan, like the distant cry of a wounded animal, echoed through the trees. One by one, team members reported feeling watched, sensing a presence that lurked just beyond the edge of perception. At times, the artifact's soft hum would crescendo into a near-deafening drone, as if the object were straining to break free from its confines. That evening, as a violent thunderstorm rolled in from the distant hills, the camp was plunged into darkness. Rain lashed at the tents, and lightning illuminated the chaos in brief, blinding flashes. In the flickering light of a hastily assembled bonfire, the team gathered in a circle, faces etched with fear and disbelief. Alicia stood before them, her expression grave. "We are facing something that defies our understanding," she said, her voice steady despite the tumult around her. "The artifact is not merely a treasure from the past, it is cursed, and its influence is spreading. We must decide how to proceed, for our safety and for the sake of preserving history." Mark's voice broke through the murmurs of the group. "I don't want to believe it, but my dreams, they show a darkness that grows with each passing night. I fear that if we do nothing, the curse will consume not only our project, but possibly more." His eyes darted around at the apprehensive faces, seeking some measure of solidarity. Layla added softly, "I think it's trying to tell us something, a message we're not yet able to decode. Perhaps there's a way to appease it, or at least understand its purpose." Her tone, filled with both academic curiosity and dread, reflected the desperate hope that knowledge could be their salvation. Evan, typically resolute, looked down at his shaking hands. "We need to document everything and reach out for help. Professor Holt might have insights we haven't considered yet. But until then, we must be cautious. I'm not sure how many more nights like this we can endure." His pragmatic nature was now tinged with the unmistakable fear of the unknown. The storm raged outside, its fury matching the inner turmoil of the team. As they debated their next steps, the artifact's case sat ominously at the center of their makeshift meeting area, its low hum merging with the patter of rain and the occasional roll of thunder. In that charged atmosphere, every whisper and every shadow seemed to echo the legends of cursed relics, portending a fate that could be both tragic and irreversible. In a desperate bid to gain some control over the situation, Alicia resolved to contact Professor Gregory Holt, an expert in ancient curses and folklore, hoping that his extensive knowledge might offer a path forward. With trembling hands, she dialed his number, and after a tense wait, the crackle of the line confirmed his presence. "Professor Holt," she began, her voice barely concealing her anxiety, "we've uncovered something extraordinary at our dig site, a relic that appears to be cursed. We're experiencing phenomena that we can't explain, and the artifact's influence is spreading throughout the camp." A gruff voice on the other end responded, laden with caution. "Dr. Monroe, if what you're saying is true, you're meddling with forces beyond mortal comprehension. Cursed artifacts carry a burden that few can bear without consequence. My advice, secure the relic, and if you must study it, do so from a distance. But be warned, the past never rests, and sometimes disturbing it invites more than just academic inquiry. The call ended abruptly, leaving Alicia with a heavy silence and a deepening dread. She hung up and looked around at the assembled faces, each one marked by uncertainty and fear. The professor's words, resonant with grim truth, seemed to underscore the dire stakes of their discovery. As night fell once more, the team retreated to their tents, hearts pounding and minds racing. In the solitude of the dark, each one faced the haunting possibility that the artifact was already awakening its dark legacy, a legacy that might soon exact a terrible toll. In that lingering darkness, as the rain subsided to a mournful drizzle and the cursed relic pulsed with a life of its own, the team could only brace themselves for the coming storm, a storm not of weather, but of ancient malice poised to break free. And so, in the shadowed hours before dawn, the curse began to unfold, a slow, inexorable descent into terror that would soon bind their fates together with the dark secrets of a long-forgotten past. In the wake of the chaotic night, the camp's uneasy calm was shattered by a determined urgency. The disturbances had become too frequent, too inexplicable to dismiss as mere equipment glitches or overactive imaginations. With heavy hearts and wary minds, the team resolved that they needed answers that could only be found in the murky depths of ancient lore. That afternoon, Alicia arranged for a teleconference with Professor Gregory Holt, an expert in ancient curses and folklore whose reputation for deciphering cryptic legends preceded him. The professor's office was a cramped, book-lined study filled with yellowed manuscripts and relics from lost civilizations. Even through the crackling line of the video call, Holt's lined face and penetrating eyes conveyed a mixture of caution and solemnity. "Dr. Monroe," Holt began, his voice low and measured, "I've reviewed the preliminary reports you sent. The artifact you've uncovered bears marks and symbols reminiscent of a long-forgotten civilization, a people rumored to have worshipped a malevolent entity they believed dwelled between worlds. Their relics were said to be vessels for that entity's power." Alicia leaned forward, her expression grave. "Professor, we're observing phenomena that defy modern explanation. Our sensors detect electromagnetic fluctuations around the artifact, and several of our team members are experiencing disturbing visions and unexplained sensations. Could it be that this relic is cursed?" Holt's eyes darkened. "Curses are rarely simple superstitions, Alicia. In my research, I encountered accounts of a cursed object from a lost era, a beautifully crafted relic that served as both a key and a lock, binding a powerful, vengeful force to our realm. Legends say that those who disturb such an object invite a slow, insidious corruption into their lives. It feeds on fear, sowing discord among even the most rational of minds." The professor's words sent a shiver through Alicia. "We've seen hints of that already. Team members have reported shadowy figures in photographs, erratic sensor readings, and in some cases, even physical marks. One of our journals was smeared with what appeared to be dark, inky stains. Could that be the curse's mark?" Holt nodded slowly. "It is possible. In some traditions, the curse is said to leave a physical imprint, a dark residue that clings to the victim like a stain on their soul. Once the relic is disturbed, its curse spreads gradually, warping reality around it and feeding on the paranoia and guilt of those it touches." As Holt spoke, Mark listened intently, his thoughts churning with memories of his own unsettling encounters with the relic. The professor continued. "The inscriptions on the artifact suggest a ritual of balance, a covenant between creation and destruction. It was designed not only as a symbol of divine power, but as a seal meant to imprison that power. Disturbing it may have loosened that seal. The artifact is a container, and within it lies a malevolent presence that, if awakened, could unmake the very fabric of your world. Layla's eyes glistened with both academic fascination and dread as she interjected, "Professor, is there any record of how such curses were broken or appeased in the ancient texts? Any ritual that might counteract its influence?" Holt's gaze shifted thoughtfully. There are scattered references, cautionary tales of rituals performed to either seal the curse once more or to exorcise the entity contained within. But these accounts are fragmented, often written in metaphor and cloaked in the language of myth. What is clear, however, is that any attempt to reverse the curse demands not only precise ritual, but also a personal sacrifice, a willingness to confront one's innermost darkness. Alicia's voice wavered as she absorbed Holt's words. "A personal sacrifice. I fear that may be a price too steep for us to pay." "The curse," Holt replied solemnly, "does not merely affect the body. It gnaws at the mind and spirit, undermining trust and unity. The more you resist it, the more it isolates you. The only way to dispel its power is to acknowledge its presence, and to be willing to pay the toll it demands." A heavy silence fell over the call as each team member grappled with the gravity of Holt's insights. Evan, whose practical nature had been shaken by the mounting evidence, finally spoke up in a hushed tone. "So what do we do now? Do we try to contain it? Or try to lift the curse?" Holt's expression grew even more somber. "Containment may be a temporary reprieve, but lifting a curse of this nature requires a deep understanding of its origins and the courage to face the darkness within. I suggest you begin by gathering all available information about the artifact's inscriptions and their historical context. Look for patterns in your sensor data and record every anomaly meticulously. Most importantly, prepare yourselves psychologically. The curse will try to turn you against each other, and only a united front can hope to withstand its insidious influence." As the call ended, Alicia sat back, her mind racing. The ancient legend Holt had described echoed ominously in her thoughts. The artifact was no mere archaeological find. It was a living relic of a bygone era, imbued with a curse that could unravel the very souls of those who dared to study it. The team's scientific curiosity was now inextricably linked with a desperate need for self-preservation. That afternoon, the team reconvened in the lab, the atmosphere markedly more somber than before. Alicia shared the professor's warnings and detailed every peculiar observation from the previous night. Mark's journal lay open on the table, its pages scrawled with his fevered recollections of shadowy visions and a pervasive cold that defied explanation. Layla's digital files were replete with images that hinted at ghostly presences lurking behind the artifact, while Evan's sensor logs provided quantitative evidence of a fluctuating energy signature that defied all conventional understanding. "We need to treat this as more than just an academic curiosity," Alicia declared, her voice firm yet tinged with apprehension. "If the curse is real, then our very lives and the integrity of our research are at risk. We must document everything, no matter how insignificant it may seem, and be prepared to take drastic measures if necessary." Mark, who had been silent, finally spoke up. "I've been thinking. Perhaps we should consider isolating the artifact from the rest of the camp. If it's influencing us, maybe limiting our exposure will help us maintain our sanity and our safety." His suggestion, while logical, carried an undercurrent of resignation, as though he already sensed the inevitable descent into darkness. Layla interjected softly, "But what about the information it might reveal? If we lock it away, we might miss the chance to understand the very phenomenon we're dealing with." Her tone was a blend of youthful enthusiasm and a dawning fear that the pursuit of knowledge might come at an unbearable cost. Alicia regarded them all with a weary determination. "I understand your concerns. We're at a crossroads. We can either seal off the artifact and pretend it's nothing more than a curiosity, or we can continue to study it at great risk to learn more about the curse and perhaps find a way to lift it." Her eyes, reflecting both hope and despair, swept the room. "We must choose carefully, for our decision will shape not only our future, but possibly the fate of everything we hold dear. The team fell into a reflective silence, each member weighing the terrifying possibilities. Outside, the day wore on, and the once bright sky seemed to darken with portent. In the lab's dim light, the artifact pulsed softly, a heartbeat of ancient malice, a constant reminder of the curse's growing influence. As dusk approached, Alicia made a decision. "We'll continue our research," she said finally, her voice resolute. "But we're taking every precaution. The artifact will remain in a secured, isolated chamber, and all our observations will be made remotely where possible. We will document every anomaly, and we will be ready for whatever comes next." The team nodded, united by a shared determination tempered by fear. They knew that the path ahead would be fraught with peril, a journey into the heart of a darkness that had slumbered for centuries. And as the lab lights dimmed and the artifact's hum became the only sound in the room, the team steeled themselves for the long, uncertain night ahead. In that quiet moment, as ancient legends mingled with the cold reality of their situation, the curse of the artifact began to reveal its true nature, a slow, inexorable force that would test their bonds, challenge their beliefs, and force them to confront the darkness within their own souls. The legend was unfolding, and there was no turning back. Outside, the wind whispered through the ruins, carrying with it the echoes of a past that refused to die. And in the lab, under the watchful gaze of history, the team braced themselves for the coming storm, a storm that promised to change everything. Night fell like a shroud over the camp, the once familiar wilderness now transformed into a landscape of eerie silhouettes and whispered warnings. In the tense silence that followed the lab meeting, the cursed artifact's insidious influence began to weave its dark tendrils into the hearts of the team. It started subtly. Mark, already haunted by his fragmented dreams of endless corridors and pleading voices, began to withdraw even further from his comrades. His once steady demeanor turned furtive, and small lapses in concentration grew more frequent. One evening, as the others huddled around the communal fire, sharing their fears in low, urgent tones, Mark lingered at the edge of the circle. His eyes, dark and distant, seemed to stare beyond the dancing flames into an abyss only he could see. Alicia noticed the change first. When she passed by Mark's tent later that night, she found it partially unzipped and its contents in disarray. Inside, among scattered journals and personal effects, lay a single page smeared with a viscous, inky residue that glimmered faintly in the moonlight, a mark reminiscent of the dark stains they'd seen on other team members' belongings. Her stomach churned as she carefully gathered his notes, each scribbled line now imbued with an undercurrent of despair and something disturbingly alien. Meanwhile, in the laboratory, the artifact's low hum had taken on a more insistent rhythm. Evan's instruments registered erratic energy pulses that grew stronger as the night deepened. The air in the lab became thick, charged with an almost palpable malevolence. Layla, while reviewing her images for the umpteenth time, swore that in the reflection of the artifact's polished surface, she glimpsed a pair of eyes, cold, unfeeling, and brimming with ancient malice. Her voice trembled as she recounted the sight to Alicia, who tried to reassure her even as her own doubts festered. As midnight approached, a palpable dread settled over the camp. The storm of the artifact's curse was no longer a distant threat. It had crept into the very souls of those who had uncovered it. In a tense, disjointed series of events, the possession began to take hold. Mark, after a particularly harrowing night of sleepless torment, was found wandering near the ruins. His steps were mechanical, and his gaze was vacant, as if he were no longer fully present in his own body. When Alicia attempted to speak to him, he only muttered incoherently about voices in the stone and the cold that wants to claim me. His words sent chills down her spine, and she knew, with a sinking certainty, that the curse had begun its work on him. Inside the cramped lab, the atmosphere grew oppressive, The artifact, secured behind its lead-lined case, now pulsed with an almost tangible rhythm, like a heartbeat echoing in the void between worlds. The very walls seemed to whisper with the sound of long-forgotten incantations, and every shadow appeared to shift with purpose. Evan's latest sensor readings spiked violently, correlating with the moment Mark had been found outside. "It's as if the artifact is drawing him in," he said, his voice tight with apprehension as he reviewed the erratic data on his tablet. Layla gathered her courage and approached Alicia. Do you think the curse is choosing a host?" She asked in a near whisper, her eyes wide with a blend of academic curiosity and raw fear. Alicia's expression was grim as she considered the possibility. "It appears that way," she replied slowly. "The artifact isn't passive. It seems to feed on our emotions, our fears, our guilt, and in doing so, it may be granting itself a foothold in one of us." Desperation set in as the team realized that internal strife could be their undoing. With Mark's behavior deteriorating rapidly, his eyes now occasionally flashing with an unnatural, cold glint, the camp's fragile unity began to splinter. Accusations flew in hushed tones, and once close friends eyed each other with suspicion. In one tense confrontation, beneath the weak glow of a battery-powered lantern, Mark, his voice unervingly monotone, accused Alicia of having brought the curse upon them with her insatiable curiosity. "You brought it here," he intoned, his words echoing with an eerie certainty. "You opened the door to the darkness." Alicia, shaken to her core, could only respond with a pained shake of her head. "This isn't your fault, Mark," she pleaded, her voice trembling with both sorrow and determination. "We all chose this path together." But even as she spoke, the eyes of the team, filled with fear and confusion, betrayed their uncertainty. The possibility that one among them was being overtaken by a malevolent force cast a pall of dread over their every interaction. In the following hours, the possession's grip tightened. Mark's condition deteriorated rapidly. He wandered the camp in fits of despair and violent outbursts, at times lashing out at those who approached him. In one heart-wrenching moment, he collapsed near the artifact's display case, his body convulsing as if wrestling with an invisible presence. Alicia rushed to his side, her heart pounding with a mix of professional concern and maternal anguish. "Mark, please, fight it," she cried, gently stroking his hair as if her touch alone might anchor him back to himself. But his eyes, once warm and familiar, now shone with a cold, implacable void, a window into a soul teetering on the brink of being consumed by something far older and far darker than any earthly fear. As dawn neared, the camp was steeped in a mournful silence. The team's collective spirit had been deeply wounded by the unfolding events. The cursed artifact, still pulsating softly in its case, loomed as a grim reminder of the price they might all have to pay for their discovery. In the dim morning light, as the first birds dared to sing, Alicia gathered the remaining team for a solemn meeting. Faces were drawn and eyes rimmed with sleepless sorrow. Even Evan's steady hands betrayed a lingering tremor, and Layla's once bright curiosity was now clouded with a deep-seated dread. "We must decide how to handle this," Alicia said, her voice resonant with the weight of responsibility. "We cannot allow the curse to spread further. We need to isolate the artifact and, if possible, find a way to purge it of this malevolent influence." Her gaze lingered on Mark, who sat in the corner, his head bowed, the silent struggle etched in every shuddering breath. The decision was not made lightly. Some argued that they should destroy the artifact entirely, while others believed that, by studying it, they might uncover a way to reverse the curse. The debate was fraught with emotion and fear. In the end, a cautious consensus emerged. The artifact would be moved to an isolated, secure chamber where its influence could be contained as much as possible, and the afflicted team member, Mark, would be given every possible medical and psychological aid, though none could truly promise to free him from the curse's grip. That morning marked a turning point in their ordeal, a descent into a personal hell that threatened to unravel the bonds of friendship and trust. The once vibrant team, united by a shared passion for discovery, now found themselves divided by a creeping darkness that seeped into their every thought. As they carried out their grim tasks, each individual was left to confront the unsettling truth. In seeking the treasures of the past, they might have awakened a curse that would forever stain their souls. And as the sun finally rose, casting long, somber shadows over the camp, Alicia stood alone for a moment on the lab's threshold, staring out at the horizon. The cursed artifact's low hum was the only sound that accompanied her silent vigil, a haunting lullaby that promised both horror and the bitter possibility of redemption, if they could only summon the strength to fight back against the darkness within. In that fragile morning light, the descent into possession was complete. The curse had begun its grim work, and its chilling legacy was only just unfolding, a legacy that would test their courage, their unity, and ultimately, their very humanity. That night, the air over the camp was thick with a palpable dread. The storm that had battered the ruins earlier had given way to an eerie, almost oppressive stillness. In the dim light of the newly isolated artifact chamber, a reinforced, lead-lined room constructed in haste by the team, Alicia gathered the remaining members together. The atmosphere was heavy with loss and uncertainty, accentuated by Mark's pitiful, vacant form slumped in a corner. His eyes, once warm and determined, now glowed with a cold emptiness, as if an external darkness had seeped into his very soul. Alicia's voice, firm yet trembling, broke the silence. We cannot let this curse destroy us from within. We've seen its power already, how it isolates, corrupts, and turns us against each other. We must confront it head-on if we are to save Mark and ourselves. Evan and Layla exchanged uneasy glances. Evan's pragmatic mind wrestled with the impossible nature of their situation, while Layla's gentle eyes brimmed with both fear and a desperate hope for understanding. Even Mark's possessed murmurs, fragments of his former self intermingled with alien, echoing words, lent an air of tragic inevitability to the gathering. Alicia continued. Professor Holt mentioned that to counter such a curse, we must be willing to face our own inner darkness. That means each of us must confront our deepest fears and guilt. Only then can we hope to sever the link the artifact has forged with us. Mark stirred, his eyes flickering momentarily as if in protest. His voice, when it came, was a distorted blend of his own and something else entirely. The void, it calls, join. The words sent a shiver through everyone. Layla stepped forward, clutching a worn, leather-bound tome filled with translated passages and ritual diagrams. I've been studying these texts, she said softly, her voice quavering but resolute. They describe a counter-ritual, one that demands unity, honesty, and a personal sacrifice. It's our only chance to force the curse to relinquish its grip. Evan interjected. But what if it's too powerful? What if our combined fears feed it further? His tone, normally unflappable, betrayed a rare moment of vulnerability. Alicia placed a steadying hand on his shoulder. Then we must trust in our shared strength. We've come this far because we believe in the possibility of redemption, even when facing forces that seem beyond our control. After a long, tense silence, the team agreed. Under Alicia's careful direction, they arranged themselves in a circle within the confines of the chamber. At the center, Mark was laid gently on a makeshift cot, his face partially obscured by a dark blanket. Surrounding him, the artifact, enshrined in its case, glowed faintly, its presence an ever-looming specter over the proceedings. Layla began the ritual by reading aloud a passage from the ancient tome, a litany that spoke of light overcoming shadow, of the need to acknowledge one's inner torment to reclaim the self. Her voice echoed in the small chamber, mingling with the low, persistent hum of the artifact. Each syllable was imbued with hope and the weight of countless forgotten souls. As the incantation progressed, the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Shadows deepened along the walls, and the artifact's glow pulsed in time with the recited verses. Alicia's eyes never left Mark's face as she continued the ritual. We call upon the strength of our past, the courage of our present, and the promise of our future, she intoned, her voice resolute despite the tears that glistened in her eyes. Let the light within us dispel the darkness that seeks to tear us apart. The atmosphere grew almost unbearable as each team member was forced to confront their own inner demons. Evan recalled the moment when he had felt utterly alone, burdened by responsibilities that had isolated him from those he cared about. Layla's mind drifted to the countless nights spent poring over ancient texts, yearning to prove that knowledge could be a shield against the unknown. Even Mark's possessed form, in its tortured struggle, seemed to wrestle with echoes of regret and sorrow buried deep within. As the final verse of the incantation resonated through the chamber, a sudden, violent tremor shook the room. The artifact's glow flared brightly, then pulsed erratically. A cacophony of distorted voices, half of the marks, filled the air, rising to a fevered pitch. For a harrowing moment, it seemed as if the very fabric of the chamber might tear apart under the strain of the unleashed power. Then, as abruptly as it had begun, the tumult subsided. The lights flickered back to a steady glow, and the oppressive chill receded, leaving behind a stunned silence. Mark lay motionless for several long seconds before his eyes fluttered open. In that moment, there was a clear, human glimmer in his gaze, a sign that the curse's hold might have been weakened. Alicia rushed to his side, her heart pounding with both relief and cautious hope. "Mark, can you hear me?" She whispered, gently stroking his hair as if to reconnect him with the person he once was. Mark's lips parted slightly, and he murmured, I'm here." The voices. They're quieter now. His tone was weak, but unmistakably his own. The rest of the team exhaled collectively, relief mingling with the lingering tension. Yet, even as the immediate crisis seemed to recede, a heavy question hung in the air. Was the curse truly broken, or had they only managed to subdue its overt manifestations for now? In the days that followed, the camp slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy. The artifact remained isolated in its secure chamber, its once fiery glow now reduced to a steady, somnolent pulse. Mark, though still marked by the ordeal, gradually regained his composure and began to share fragments of his harrowing experience, a blend of shadowed nightmares and brief moments of clarity that hinted at the darkness he had faced. Alicia, Evan, and Layla continued their meticulous documentation of the phenomenon. Every anomaly, every subtle shift in the artifact's energy was recorded with the hope that one day they might fully understand the nature of the curse, and perhaps devise a permanent remedy. The experience had forever changed them, leaving behind scars that ran deeper than skin, but also a renewed sense of unity and determination. In the quiet aftermath, as the sun set on the camp for the first time since the ritual, Alicia gathered the team once more. "We've taken a vital step tonight," she said, her voice resolute. "We may not have banished the curse completely, but we've shown it that we will not succumb to its darkness. Our unity, our willingness to face our own inner demons, has proved to be a powerful counterforce." As the camp settled into an uneasy, hopeful quiet, the cursed artifact sat in its isolated chamber, a silent testament to the power of ancient evil and the enduring strength of those who dared to confront it. The battle was far from over. The curse still lingered at the edges of their lives, a reminder that true light is forged in the crucible of darkness. But for now, in that fragile, hard-won victory, there was hope, a promise that even the deepest shadows could be overcome by the unbreakable bond of human courage. And so, with the first light of dawn breaking through the night, the team vowed to continue their research and their vigil, ever determined to understand, and ultimately, to conquer the darkness that had almost consumed them. Night's oppressive shroud descended once more over the camp, and every member of the team could feel the air tremble with a force that was no longer confined to their nightmares. The curse, which had been slowly tightening its grip over the past days, now erupted in a sudden, violent surge of energy. In the lead line chamber where the artifact was sequestered, alarms from Evan's sensors screamed in rapid succession, announcing a spike that defied all previous readings. Outside, a tempest roiled as if the heavens themselves had grown angry. Torrential rain hammered the tents, and jagged forks of lightning illuminated a landscape that had already borne the scars of unseen horrors. In that chaotic moment, the boundaries between the natural and the supernatural blurred. Inside the secure chamber, Alicia stood rigid before the display case. The artifact's once subdued glow now flared with an unholy light that filled every corner of the room. Its intricate carvings writhed as if animated by a malignant will, and the low, persistent hum swelled into a deafening roar. All around, the team, Mark, Layla, Evan, and even a few others who had huddled close in shared dread, watched as the curse reached its apex. Mark, whose recent possession had left him a shell of his former self, convulsed violently on a makeshift cot. His eyes, previously clouded with an otherworldly chill, now rolled back momentarily as though he were caught between two realms. His voice, when it emerged, was a guttural blend of his own and that of an ancient, nameless entity. The abyss. It calls to me. Alicia's heart pounded as she stepped forward, her hands shaking while she clutched a worn copy of the ritual text that Layla had painstakingly transcribed from ancient manuscripts. "Mark, please, fight it," she cried, her voice echoing off the sterile walls. But even as she spoke, the room trembled under the weight of the unleashed curse. In the midst of this chaos, Evan's instrument spiked to unprecedented levels. The artifact's energy is off the charts. He shouted over the din, his voice laced with both scientific wonder and stark terror. Layla, eyes wide and glistening with unshed tears, continued to record every flicker of movement on her digital camera, knowing that every moment was a precious document of the battle between light and darkness. Outside the chamber, in the broader camp, eerie phenomena multiplied. Shadows danced unnaturally along the perimeters, and ghostly voices, half whispered and half roared, seemed to seep through the walls of every tent. The once familiar campgrounds now resembled a battlefield from another time, a place where the forces of ancient malice had come to claim their due. Back in the chamber, the team gathered in a desperate huddle. Alicia's determined eyes scanned the frantic faces around her. "We must complete the counter ritual," she insisted, her voice firm despite the tremor of fear coursing through her. "Our only hope is to channel our collective will, our inner light, against this surge. We have to save Mark and seal the curse before it completely overwhelms us." Layla's voice wavered as she recited a passage from the ancient tome, the words a fragile beacon of hope amid the madness. "By the grace of light that endures beyond night, by the strength of hearts united in defiance, we cast out the shadows and reclaim our souls." The team joined in, their voices trembling but resolute. Each syllable was a battle cry against the encroaching darkness. Mark's convulsions, though still intense, seemed to slow slightly as if the ritual's power was beginning to push back against the malignant force. Evan and Layla worked furiously to recalibrate the sensors and record every shifting pattern of energy, their fingers flying over the controls as the data streamed in faster than ever. Outside, the storm raged with unbridled fury, the sky split by relentless lightning that illuminated the terror-stricken camp. The very air seemed to vibrate with ancient power, a reminder that this was no ordinary natural phenomenon. It was a cosmic reckoning, orchestrated by forces as old as time itself. Alicia's voice rose above the cacophony. "Focus your thoughts, your memories of love, courage, and all that is good. Let every one of you remember why we fight against the darkness." Her impassioned plea resonated deeply among the team. In that moment, The laboratory became a crucible where personal fears and past regrets melted away, replaced by a collective determination to overcome the curse. As the incantation reached its climax, the artifact's glow surged with blinding intensity. The pulsations of its light synced with the rhythmic chanting of the team, creating a surreal harmony between ancient malice and human hope. For a heart-stopping moment, the oppressive force that had once seemed insurmountable faltered, as if hesitating in the face of this unified defiance. Then, with a final, resonant word uttered in unison, "Liberate," a shockwave of pure energy burst forth from the artifact. The force rippled outward, crashing against the walls of the chamber and reverberating through the entire camp. Mark's tortured cries mingled with a wailing wind as the dark energy was violently expelled, drawn back into the relic from whence it came. The overwhelming tumult subsided almost as suddenly as it had erupted. The artifact's glow dimmed to a steady, subdued light, and the once deafening hum faded into a soft, melancholic murmur. Mark, now slumped but conscious, blinked slowly as clarity returned to his eyes. The malevolent presence that had tormented him seemed to have been driven back, at least temporarily. For several long, suspended moments, the chamber was silent except for the labored breathing of the team and the distant echo of the storm. Then, one by one, tentative voices emerged, words of relief, gratitude, and weary determination. Evan exhaled shakily. The readings. They're falling back to baseline. It seems we've pushed it back. Layla, wiping tears from her cheeks, added softly, "I can't believe it. I think we did it." Alicia knelt beside Mark, gently taking his hand. "You're safe now," she murmured, her voice thick with emotion. "We're not out of the woods yet, but tonight we have won a battle. We've shown that even when darkness seeks to claim our souls, the light of our unity can drive it back." As the storm outside began to ease and the first tentative hints of dawn touched the horizon, the team gathered in a solemn circle. Their faces, illuminated by the soft glow of emergency lights, bore the marks of exhaustion, loss, and an unbreakable will to endure. The cursed artifact, though still a repository of ominous power, now pulsed with a calmer rhythm, a reminder that the curse was not vanquished entirely, only subdued for the moment. In that quiet aftermath, Alicia's eyes shone with both triumph and foreboding. "This is only the beginning," she warned gently. "The curse may lie dormant now, but its influence lingers in every shadow, every whisper. We must remain vigilant. Our journey to truly lift this curse is far from over." And as the team slowly began to gather their scattered resolve and prepare for the uncertain days ahead, the lab fell into a reflective hush. The battle had been fierce, and the scars, both seen and unseen, would remain as a testament to the cost of delving into ancient, malevolent power. Yet amid the remnants of chaos, there was a fragile, unyielding spark of hope. A hope that, no matter how dark the night, the light of the human spirit would always endure. With the first pale glow of dawn creeping over the horizon, the team emerged from the chamber to face a new day. Their shared ordeal had forged an unspoken bond, a promise that they would continue their quest to understand, contain, and ultimately vanquish the cursed legacy of the artifact. For now, the chaos had receded, but the silent warning of the darkness remained, an echo that would forever remind them of the delicate balance between hope and despair. The climax of chaos had passed, but its reverberations would echo in every decision they made from that moment on, a testament to the unyielding struggle against the ancient shadows that lurked at the edges of human understanding. The storm had passed, but its effects were far from gone. The camp, once a hub of eager discovery, now bore the weight of what had transpired. Torn tents, mud-soaked paths, and scattered equipment painted a picture of barely contained chaos. But the real scars ran deeper, etched into the minds of those who had faced the raw power of the curse. Alicia stood at the entrance of the chamber, staring at the artifact's glass enclosure. Though its glow had dulled significantly, it still pulsed with an eerie rhythm, as if waiting, biding its time. Layla approached, her face pale and drawn. "Mark is awake," she said softly. "He doesn't remember much, just fragments." "But," she hesitated. "He says something is still inside him." Alicia turned sharply. "Inside him? You mean the curse?" Layla nodded, chewing her lip. He described it as a whisper, like it's not fully gone, just quiet, lurking in the back of his mind. A cold shiver ran through Alicia. She had known their battle was not yet over, but to hear confirmation of it so soon made her stomach twist. "Let's talk to him." Mark sat on a cot in one of the few intact tents, his skin slick with sweat despite the cool morning air. His eyes darted around the room, unfocused, as if he were seeing things no one else could. When Alicia and Layla stepped inside, he looked up sharply, his pupils contracting unnaturally fast. "I'm not alone in here," he murmured, his voice hoarse. Alicia kneeled beside him. "Mark, listen to me. We drove it back. We weakened it. But we need to know what you're feeling, what you're hearing." Mark swallowed hard, his throat bobbing. "It's like a memory that isn't mine. A voice that isn't speaking, but I can still hear it." He pressed his fingers to his temples. "It doesn't tell me to do anything. It just watches." Layla inhaled sharply. "Watches." Mark nodded, like it's waiting for something, waiting for me to slip. Alicia exchanged a look with Layla. The curse had not been defeated, merely subdued. It had retreated, but it had left a part of itself behind, festering within Mark like an infection. Evan entered the tent, holding a tablet filled with readings from the night before. "I ran another analysis," he announced. "Energy levels dropped significantly after the ritual, but there's still an anomaly. A presence. It's weaker, but it hasn't left entirely." Alicia clenched her jaw. "Then we're not done." Layla hesitated before speaking. "There's something else." She pulled out a notebook filled with her handwritten translations of the ancient text. "I kept reading after the ritual. There's a passage we missed." She flipped through the pages until she found it. It says that driving the darkness back is only temporary unless... Her breath hitched. "Unless what?" Evan pressed. "Unless a vessel is willingly given." Silence filled the tent. Alicia's mind raced. "A vessel? As in? A person?" Layla nodded grimly. "The darkness can't just be destroyed. It has to be bound, contained in something or someone." Mark stiffened. "Are you saying this thing inside me won't leave unless someone takes it willingly?" Layla looked down. "That's what it says." Evan exhaled through his nose, frustration evident in every movement. "So what? We have to sacrifice someone? That's not an option." Alicia shook her head. "Not sacrifice. Containment. The passage says the vessel must be willing, meaning the entity can't just take someone by force. It has to be accepted." Mark gave a hollow chuckle. "Great. So what? We flip a coin to see who gets to live the rest of their life haunted." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. No one spoke. The realization was suffocating. They had fought so hard to rid themselves of the curse, only to find that the only true way to contain it was to burden someone with its presence forever. Layla slowly closed the book. "There might be another way," she murmured, barely above a whisper. All eyes turned to her. She hesitated, then continued. "If we could create a secondary artifact, something with the right sigils, the right materials, we might be able to bind it into an object instead of a person." Evan frowned. "That's a big if." Layla exhaled. "I know. But it's better than just..." She glanced at Mark, her voice faltering. "It's better than the alternative." Mark, despite his exhaustion, managed a weak smile. "Thanks, Layla. I'd rather not be a haunted doll, if that's all the same to you." Alicia's mind churned with possibilities. If they could create an object capable of binding the curse, then maybe, just maybe they could break the cycle. But as she looked at the artifact sitting in the distance, still faintly pulsing with a life of its own, she couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't going to let go so easily. The battle wasn't over. Not yet. The camp was silent except for the occasional rustling of wind through the trees. The storm had passed, but an unnatural stillness hung over everything, as if the land itself was holding its breath. Inside the main tent, Alicia, Layla, Evan, and Mark sat huddled around a table, books and notes scattered between them. The candlelight flickered, casting long, restless shadows along the canvas walls. Layla tapped a finger against the open pages of her notebook. If we're going to create an artifact to bind the curse, we need to get this exactly right. The texts say that the original artifact carved from a specific type of stone, one that acted as a conduit for energy. Evan, rubbing his temples, leaned over the pages. Let me guess, it's not something we could just pick up at a gift shop? Layla shot him a dry look. Actually, we might have already found some. Remember those obsidian fragments we cataloged last week? They match the descriptions. Alicia nodded, recalling the strange, dark shards they had unearthed in the lower excavation site. If those fragments are from the same material as the original artifact, we might be able to shape a vessel strong enough to contain the curse. Mark, still pale and weary, gave a tired smile. So, I won't have to be the vessel after all? Layla hesitated before responding. Not if this works. But, she glanced down at the book again. It also says that the ritual requires something else. Alicia felt the weight in Layla's voice before she even said it. A sacrifice. Silence fell over the group. Evan stiffened. Hold on. We agreed. No one is dying for this. Layla quickly shook her head. Not a life sacrifice. Personal sacrifice. The person performing the ritual has to offer something significant. Something that holds deep meaning to them. The greater the sacrifice, the stronger the binding. Alicia exhaled, her fingers tracing the edge of the old book. What kind of sacrifice are we talking about? Layla's voice was barely above a whisper. Memories. A connection. A piece of the person's soul, in a way. Mark let out a breathless laugh, shaking his head. Of course. It's never easy, is it? Alicia straightened, resolve hardening in her chest. Then I'll do it. Evan turned to her sharply. Alicia, no. You don't know what it'll take from you. She met his gaze, unwavering. I'll let us hear. I found the artifact. I opened the chamber. If anyone should bear the cost, it's me. Layla looked pained, but didn't argue. She knew Alicia well enough to understand there was no change in her mind. Then we should prepare, Layla said, closing the book. We don't have much time. The binding ritual had to be performed at the site where the original artifact had been unearthed. The team gathered at the lower excavation site, where the ground was still torn from their initial dig. The night was cold, and the air thick with tension. Alicia stood in the center of the clearing, the newly carved obsidian vessel resting on a stone slab before her. Evan and Layla drew the ritual sigils around it, careful to follow the precise instructions from the ancient texts. Mark, despite his weakness, stood close by, watching with wary eyes. The presence inside him had grown quieter since the last ritual, but he could still feel it lurking, waiting. Alicia took a deep breath and placed her hands over the vessel. The words of the incantation were ancient, their syllables rough on her tongue as she spoke them aloud. The moment she began, the air around them shifted, a pulse of unseen energy rippling through the earth. The artifact's dim glow flared suddenly, responding to the ritual. The ground trembled beneath them. Mark gasped, clutching his head. It's fighting back. Alicia gritted her teeth, pushing forward. She could feel something being pulled from her, memories flashing through her mind like torn pages of a book. Her father's voice, the warmth of her childhood home, a name she suddenly couldn't remember. The sacrifice had begun. Layla's voice trembled as she continued the incantation beside her, reinforcing the binding. The obsidian vessel pulsed with unnatural energy, drawing the darkness from both the artifact and from Mark. Mark let out a strangled cry as the last remnants of the presence inside him were wrenched free, pulled into the waiting vessel. The sigils around them burned with an eerie light. Then silence. Alicia collapsed to her knees, gasping for breath. The artifact, once so alive with cursed energy, now lay dull and inert. The obsidian vessel, however, pulsed with an ominous glow. They had done it, but at what cost? Layla rushed to Alicia's side, gripping her shoulders. Alicia, are you okay? Alicia blinked, her mind foggy. Something felt missing. She tried to remember why they were here, what had just happened, but pieces of it were slipping through her fingers like sand. I don't. She trailed off, staring blankly ahead. Layla's face paled. The sacrifice. Evan crouched beside them. What did you lose? Alicia struggled to form the words. She could remember the ritual, the fear, the energy, but something else had been taken. A part of her past. A part of her identity. She closed her eyes, trying to summon the memory of her mother's face. Nothing came. Tears welled in her eyes as realization struck. The curse was bound, but in return, it had taken something precious from her, something she could never get back. The night was quiet, save for the distant sound of the wind through the trees. The nightmare was over, but the weight of it would never leave them. Dawn broke with a reluctant light over the camp, a gentle, gray glow that seemed to hesitate at the edge of a deep, unspoken sorrow. The storm had passed, but its echoes remained in every trembling heartbeat and in the quiet spaces where memories once thrived. In the wake of the binding ritual, the team gathered in a circle around a hastily assembled table in the now silent lab, each person bearing the scars of what they had endured. Alicia sat slumped in a worn chair, her eyes distant as she tried to piece together fragments of a self that now felt strangely incomplete. The ritual had been a desperate gambit to reclaim Mark and to contain the ancient curse that had haunted them. But in its wake, Alicia had lost something irreplaceable. She stared at the blank space in her mind where a cherished memory should have been, a memory of laughter, of her mother's warm embrace, of a time before the artifact's insidious influence had darkened her world. Mark, still recovering on a cot in the corner, offered weak smiles of reassurance as he recounted only fragments of his experience. I hear it. Sometimes, he murmured, his voice barely more than a whisper. A voice that doesn't tell me to do anything. I just feel it like a shadow following me. But I'm here now. His words carried both relief and a lingering uncertainty. The curse had been forced back into its vessel, yet its presence, like a stubborn stain, would not fully fade. Evan and Layla, who had worked feverishly to record every anomaly and calibrate the instruments, exchanged solemn glances. Evan's once steady hands now trembled as he reviewed the sensor logs. The artifact's energy had settled to a near-normal baseline, but every so often, a subtle spike reminded them that the darkness was never truly vanquished. Layla, her eyes red from sleepless nights spent poring over images and ancient texts, offered a tentative, hopeful smile. We've pushed it back, she said, but not entirely erased it. Alicia's voice, soft but resolute, broke the heavy silence. We won a battle tonight, but the war is far from over. The artifact is secure in its isolated chamber, and our preliminary data suggests that its curse is in a dormant state for now. But there's always a risk it might stir again. She paused, her gaze drifting to the artifact's lead-line case resting in the far corner of the room. I may have lost something dear, a part of my past that I can never recover. But if that loss can serve as a reminder, if it can fuel our determination to learn and protect, then perhaps there's a sliver of hope in our sacrifice. The room filled with a reflective hush as each team member considered her words. In that moment, their shared ordeal had woven them together in a tapestry of pain, resilience, and cautious optimism. Their friendships, tested by terror and loss, now bore the marks of a hard-won unity. They had stared into the abyss and had, against insurmountable odds, found the strength to push back the darkness. Outside, the world slowly stirred to life. The ruins and wild landscape around the dig site, once ominous and forbidding, now shimmered under a gentle, tentative light. The ancient temple stood in quiet majesty, its secrets locked within crumbling stone, as if it too was mourning the price paid by those who dared disturb its slumber. Over the following days, the team continued their research with a renewed sense of purpose. They maintained a round-the-clock schedule of observations, cataloging every minute fluctuation from the artifact, every unusual reading that might hint at the curse's lingering influence. Meetings were held to discuss not only the technical data, but also the emotional toll the ordeal had taken. In these sessions, the pain of loss mingled with the fragile hope that, through understanding, they might one day develop a permanent solution. Layla's research uncovered further fragments of the ancient texts, hints of rituals that could potentially neutralize the curse entirely, but each came with a dire warning about the price of such power. Evan, ever the pragmatist, began drafting protocols to safeguard the artifact and the research site against future disturbances, proposing stringent measures that would limit exposure and monitor the site remotely. Mark, whose struggle had left him visibly changed, embarked on a long, arduous journey of recovery. With counseling and the support of his friends, he started to reclaim bits of himself, moments of clarity and hope that flickered in the dark recesses of his memory. His occasional, haunted murmurs gave way to cautious optimism as he realized that he was not defined solely by the curse that had once threatened to consume him. And Alicia, though burdened with the ache of lost memories, found strength in the unity and determination of her team. Every day, she pushed herself to document not only the scientific data, but also the human cost of their venture, stories of pain, sacrifice, and ultimately, resilience. In her private journal, she wrote, "We are bound by darkness, but it is in our shared light that we find the strength to carry on. Each loss, each scar, is a testament to our courage, and a reminder that hope, however fragile, is worth fighting for." As weeks turned into months, the artifact remained locked away under high security, its ominous hum a constant reminder of the ancient curse that still lurked at the edges of their lives. The team's work continued, driven by a collective commitment to safeguard humanity from the remnants of a past that refused to fade. New partnerships formed with experts in occult studies and paranormal research, and together they began to unravel the deeper mysteries of the relic. The path ahead was uncertain. Every breakthrough was tempered by the fear that the darkness might resurface at any moment. Yet, in the quiet aftermath of that fateful night, a new chapter had begun, one where the lessons of the past were not merely a source of despair, but a beacon guiding them toward a future where light could prevail over shadow. Standing on the precipice of this new beginning, Alicia gazed out at the horizon, where the sun's rays battled the lingering remnants of night. The journey had been painful, and the wounds, both seen and unseen, would take time to heal. But as the day broke fully, casting away the ghosts of the past, she whispered a vow to herself and to the team. "We will endure. We will learn from our losses, and we will stand together as the guardians of hope." And so, with hearts heavy yet determined, they stepped forward into the uncharted future, a future where every sunrise promised both the memory of what was sacrificed and the hope of what could yet be saved. Shadows, Alicia knew in her heart that they had made a mark that could not be undone. The fight against the ancient curse may not be finished, but the bond they shared had proven stronger than the darkness. They had endured, they had sacrificed, and they had triumphed. With every step forward, they would be tested once again, But now, they faced the future with a renewed sense of purpose. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but they were no longer just students studying a relic. They were the guardians of the light, the witnesses to history, and the keepers of hope. And as Alicia turned back toward the camp, feeling the first of the dawn's warmth on her face, she realized that, whatever the darkness had tried to strip away, the light within them would never falter. They had indeed conquered. In the weeks following that fateful night, the camp slowly transformed from a place of raw terror into a quiet center of relentless research and guarded optimism. The cursed artifact, securely locked away in its fortified chamber, continued to emit its low, steady hum, a persistent reminder of the darkness that once nearly consumed them. Though the immediate threat had receded, every member of the team knew that its influence still lingered like a shadow at the edge of their vision. Alicia sat at her cluttered desk in the lab, reviewing the latest sensor readings and journal entries. The numbers had largely returned to normal, yet there were sporadic spikes, fleeting pulses of energy that defied easy explanation. Every time a surge occurred, a chill ran down her spine, as if the artifact were whispering secrets from an ancient, malevolent past. At a newly convened meeting, the team gathered once more in the cramped conference room. Evan adjusted his glasses as he projected the sensor data onto the wall, highlighting the occasional anomalies that still punctuated the column. Layla, ever meticulous, had spent nights cross-referencing her photographs with the ancient texts. Her latest findings hinted at a possible ritual pattern, one that might suggest the curse was not fully vanquished but merely in a dormant state. Mark, whose recovery had been long and painful, sat quietly at the end of the table. Though his eyes now shone with a tentative clarity, there remained an undercurrent of sorrow and vigilance in his gaze. "I still hear that whisper sometimes," he confessed softly, his voice barely audible. "It's as if something's still reaching out from the darkness, waiting for a chance to slip back in." Alicia's expression hardened with resolve. "We cannot afford to be complacent," she said. "The curse has taught us that darkness never truly dies, it only hides. Our work now is to understand its every nuance, to fortify ourselves against any resurgence." The discussion turned to the possibility of an active countermeasure, a way to permanently seal the malignant force within the artifact. Layla proposed further analysis of the ancient inscriptions, hoping to unlock a ritual that might finally bind the curse beyond the fragile truce they'd forced upon it. Evan detailed plans for improved sensors and tighter security protocols around the site, while Mark, now more a symbol of their ordeal than ever before, offered insights from his own tormented experiences. Outside the lab, the world moved on with a deceptive normalcy. The ruins of the ancient temple, bathed in the gentle light of early autumn, stood as silent monuments to a past that refused to yield. The local villagers whispered of strange lights and eerie sounds in the night, a subtle, persistent reminder that the supernatural was not confined solely to the remote dig site. In a moment of quiet introspection on the camp's outer veranda, Alicia gazed out at the horizon. The sky was streaked with the muted golds and purples of dawn, and for a fleeting second, she allowed herself to believe that hope was more than a fragile promise. It was a tangible force, one that had carried them through the darkest of nights. Yet, even as the sun rose, casting long, hopeful shadows over the camp, a single question remained unspoken among them. Had they truly banished the curse, or was it merely lying in wait, biding its time? That evening, as the team prepared for another long day of research and recovery, Layla found an unexpected inscription on one of the newly cataloged fragments recovered from the lower ruins. The symbols were unmistakably similar to those on the cursed artifact, but interwoven among them was a pattern that suggested a final act, a ritual closure. Her heart pounded as she realized that this might be the key to permanently sealing the curse. Gathering the team in the lab once again, Layla presented her discovery with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. "I believe we have a chance," she said, her voice trembling with both hope and fear. "If we can replicate this pattern correctly, we might be able to bind the curse completely, extract it from the artifact, and lock it away forever." Alicia exchanged a determined glance with Mark, who nodded slowly, a bittersweet smile flickering on his lips as if acknowledging the cost of every victory. Evan's pragmatic eyes lit up with cautious optimism, while Layla's scholarly fervor filled the room with renewed energy. In that charged moment, as the promise of ambiguous hope mingled with the remnants of past terror, the team made their silent pact. They would push forward, no matter the personal cost, to ensure that the darkness they'd once faced would never again reclaim its hold. The journey ahead was uncertain, a path fraught with potential sacrifice and unforeseen challenges, but it was a path they were now determined to walk together. As twilight fell over the camp that night, the artifact's low hum merged with the gentle whispers of the wind, and the ancient temple in the distance stood as both a reminder of past horrors and a beacon of potential redemption. The uncharted future lay before them, its horizon a tapestry of shadow and light, and with hearts both heavy and hopeful, they stepped forward into a new dawn, ready to confront the lingering specter of the curse once and for all. In the weeks that followed the fragile victory of the binding ritual, the camp settled into a tense routine, a careful balance between scientific inquiry and the ever-present undercurrent of dread. The cursed artifact remained locked away in its reinforced chamber, its low hum a constant reminder that the darkness was never fully vanquished. Yet as the team resumed their daily tasks, subtle signs began to emerge, hints that the curse was not content to remain dormant. One overcast afternoon, while reviewing sensor data in the lab, Evan noticed a disturbing trend. His instruments, which had largely returned to baseline levels, now registered sporadic spikes in energy around the artifact's enclosure. The readings were irregular, yet unmistakable, sharp pulses that seemed to echo a rhythm, like a distant drumbeat calling from another world. Evan's face grew pale as he double-checked the devices. "These aren't glitches," he said, his voice low and urgent. "There's a pattern here, a signature we haven't seen before." Alicia gathered the team in the cramped conference room, where the soft glow of computer monitors illuminated worried faces. "Evan's data is compelling," she began, pointing to a graph on the screen. "We're seeing periodic surges that correspond with specific intervals. It's as if the artifact is communicating, or perhaps it's reacting to something we haven't yet detected." Layla, who had been poring over her digital images late into the night, interjected. "I've noticed something else too," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "While reviewing the photos of the artifact, I detected faint, almost imperceptible symbols etched on the inner surface of the display case. They weren't there before, at least not in the shots we took immediately after the ritual." Her eyes widened as she scrolled through the images, each one revealing a subtle, ghost-like inscription that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. Mark, now recovering slowly from his ordeal, looked up from his journal, his gaze distant yet attentive. "In my dreams," he murmured, "I keep seeing a vast corridor lined with these same symbols. They pulse and shift, as if trying to tell me something. I can't shake the feeling that it's a warning. A new chapter in this curse is about to begin." Outside the lab, the atmosphere had grown charged with an inexplicable energy. As dusk fell over the camp, heavy clouds gathered, blotting out the last of the daylight. A frigid wind swept across the excavation site, stirring the ancient dust and carrying with it an eerie resonance, a murmur that sounded almost like whispered voices reciting a long-forgotten chant. Alicia stepped outside onto the rocky veranda, letting the cold air clear her mind. In the distance, the silhouette of the ancient temple loomed, a silent sentinel against the gathering storm. For a long moment, she stood there, feeling the weight of the past and the uncertainty of the future. The artifact's curse, though subdued, had left an indelible mark on each of them. And now, the emergence of these new omens suggested that the darkness was not defeated, it was evolving. Returning to the lab, Alicia gathered the team for an impromptu meeting. "We have new evidence," she said, her tone measured but resolute. "The artifact isn't static, it's adapting. The energy surges and the newly discovered symbols indicate that something is stirring. I believe we're witnessing the curse preparing to reassert itself in a new form." Evan's fingers drummed anxiously on the table as he adjusted his tablet. "I'm recalibrating the sensors now," he promised, "but early readings suggest that these pulses are not random. They're following a deliberate cadence, almost like an incantation in numerical form." Layla added, "The inscriptions I found might be a key, a message that could explain how to counteract this resurgence. I need to analyze them further, cross-referencing with the ancient texts Holt provided. There might be a ritual, a final closure that we haven't yet attempted." Mark, his voice steadier now, but still edged with residual fear, spoke quietly. "I don't want to see that corridor again in my dreams. If this is a warning, then we need to heed it. We must prepare ourselves, both mentally and physically, for what might come next." Alicia nodded solemnly. "We have two choices," she said, her eyes sweeping over her determined colleagues. "We can either try to seal this new surge, to perform another counter-ritual, or we can leave it be and hope it remains dormant. But if history has taught us anything, it's that these forces are patient, and they will find a way to break free if we're not vigilant." As the team debated the best course of action, the first raindrops of an approaching storm began to fall, each drop a tiny herald of the turbulent night ahead. Outside, the temple's silhouette darkened as lightning split the sky in brief, brilliant flashes. The ominous energy in the camp grew palpable, as if the very air vibrated with the promise of renewed chaos. In that charged moment, Alicia made a decision. "We cannot allow this curse to reclaim us," she declared. "We will study these new omens, document every anomaly, and, if necessary, perform a binding ritual again. But this time, we will be ready. We will harness our knowledge and our unity to confront the darkness before it engulfs us." The team nodded in grim determination. Each of them understood the stakes. Their lives, their work, and their very souls hung in the balance. The cursed artifact had spoken once before, and now its evolving message demanded that they act. As night finally fell in earnest, the camp braced for what was to come. The storm raged outside, the ancient temple and the cursed relic looming as silent witnesses to an unfolding destiny. And amid the flickering candlelight and the persistent hum of unseen power, the team prepared to face the next chapter, a new omen that promised both peril and the possibility of redemption. In that uncertain darkness, with hearts both heavy and hopeful, they resolved to confront the curse once more, united in their unyielding determination to let the light of knowledge and courage prevail over the shadows of the past. Of the artifact, the team gathered once again, determined not to let the shadows of the past overtake their future. The struggle was far from over, and as the wind howled through the brush and the team continued their preparations, they steeled themselves for the decisive confrontation that would, at last, lay the curse to rest or condemn them all. The path forward was uncertain, but one truth remained clear. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, bound by their shared purpose and the hope that they could break the cycle before it was too late. The omen had been unmistakable, a final, desperate message scrawled in the language of ancient dread. In the days following its appearance, tension had seeped into every corner of the camp. The once dormant hum of the cursed artifact now pulsed with renewed urgency, and each sensor spike and whispered echo deepened the team's resolve. Something had to be done before the curse grew too powerful to contain. In the dim light of the late afternoon, Alicia convened an emergency meeting in the lab. Maps of the excavation site, sensor readouts, and Layla's annotated translations of the ancient text were spread out across a scarred wooden table. The air was thick with anticipation and an unspoken sorrow for what might be required. A new phase of the curse is upon us, Alicia began, her voice steady but edged with fatigue. The recent surge in energy, the additional inscriptions, and the dreams we've all experienced point to one inevitable conclusion. If we do not act now, the curse will break free entirely. Her gaze swept over the anxious faces of her colleagues, Mark's haunted eyes, Layla's trembling determination, and Evan's measured concern. Layla traced her finger over one of the newly discovered inscriptions. I've cross-referenced these symbols with the fragments Holt mentioned. There's a passage, ritual of release. It doesn't banish the curse outright, but it offers a chance to lock it away permanently within a created vessel. In other words, we can force the darkness to remain confined to an object rather than leaching into us. Her voice faltered, as if the enormity of the idea weighed on her very soul. Mark, still fragile from his recent ordeal, interjected quietly. And what does that require? I felt that presence inside me, the whisper that promised to wait until I slipped completely away. I don't want it to be me. His voice was a mix of fear and resignation. Evan, ever the pragmatist, folded his arms. According to the texts, the ritual demands a personal sacrifice. A piece of one's inner self must be willingly given, a part of the person's essence that anchors the darkness in a new vessel. It's not blood or life, but something more intangible, a memory, an emotion, perhaps even an aspect of one's identity. He looked at Alicia, who had been silent, absorbing every word. Alicia's eyes clouded with both resolve and a trace of sorrow. I volunteered last time to bear the cost in the counter-ritual, she said slowly. I lost a piece of my past, a memory I cherished, in order to push back the curse. I believe that sacrifice might have weakened it, but clearly, it wasn't enough to seal it permanently. She paused, then added with quiet determination, I'm prepared to try again if it means protecting all of us. A heavy silence fell. The room seemed to shrink as the gravity of their decision pressed in. Finally, Layla spoke, her voice trembling yet firm. Then we must prepare for the ritual of release. We'll need to reconstruct the secondary vessel, a container fashioned from the obsidian fragments we recovered, carved with the proper sigils. It must be aligned with the energies of the artifact and the ancient texts. Over the next several hours, the team set to work with a determined urgency. Under the flickering glow of oil lamps, they arranged the obsidian shards into a rough, yet purposeful vessel. Evan and Layla meticulously inscribed it with the intricate symbols derived from their translations, each stroke a plea for containment. Mark, though still recovering, assisted by steadying the delicate pieces with trembling hands, while Alicia gathered the ritual components, a silver chalice filled with a mixture of purified water and ancient incense, a ceremonial blade etched with protective runes, and a weathered, leather-bound copy of the forbidden texts. As dusk deepened into a cold, starless night, the team transported the newly formed vessel to a secluded clearing near the dig site, the place where the cursed artifact had been unearthed. Here, beneath the silent watch of crumbling temple ruins and a sky heavy with impending rain, they arranged the ritual circle. A circle of salt, drawn meticulously with a trembling hand, encompassed the vessel at its center. Candles, their flames flickering in the bitter wind, were set at cardinal points, their light a fragile barrier against the darkness. Mark stood apart, still tormented by the lingering presence that had nearly overtaken him. Alicia approached him, her gaze soft yet insistent. Mark, I know you're afraid, but this ritual isn't about forcing you to carry the curse. It's about taking the darkness from you and all of us and locking it away. Trust me, we're doing this together. Mark swallowed hard. I'll try, he whispered, his voice laden with both determination and despair. At the appointed hour, the team gathered in the circle. Alicia, at the center, held the obsidian vessel aloft as Layla began to recite the incantation from the ancient texts. Her voice was steady, Yet every syllable carried the weight of centuries. The words, archaic and haunting, filled the night air, weaving through the trembling branches and the low, mournful wind. Evan activated his portable sensors, and the readings surged. The energy in the clearing became erratic, the very ground beneath them pulsing as if alive. The cursed artifact, stored safely away back at camp, continued its low hum, a distant reminder of the malevolence they sought to contain. As Layla's incantation reached a crescendo, Alicia stepped forward and placed her hands upon the obsidian vessel. The cold stone seemed to shudder under her touch, and a sudden chill swept through the circle. One by one, the team closed their eyes and focused on their innermost memories, the joys, the sorrows, the fragments of identity that defined them. For Alicia, it was the memory of her mother's warm smile, now flickering at the edge of oblivion. For Mark, it was the bittersweet recollection of a lost childhood before the weight of guilt had darkened his soul. Each individual silently offered up a piece of themselves, a sacrifice of the intangible that bound their very essence to the ritual. The wind picked up, swirling around them, carrying with it ghostly whispers that mingled with the chanting. The energy in the clearing grew overwhelming, a force both terrible and magnificent. The obsidian vessel began to glow, a deep, pulsing blue light that synchronized with the rhythmic beating of countless hearts. In that moment, the darkness that had plagued them seemed to quiver, drawn inexorably toward the vessel like moths to a flame. Alicia's voice rose above the tumult, firm and resolute. By the light of our shared memories, by the strength of our unity, I bind you, this cursed darkness, to this vessel. May it remain locked away, never to darken our lives again. The words, spoken with the fervor of absolute conviction, reverberated through the clearing. For several agonizing moments, nothing happened. Then, as if in response to their collective sacrifice, the vessel's glow intensified, enveloping the team in a radiant, otherworldly light. The energy around them reached a fevered pitch, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. A deafening roar filled the clearing as the darkness was violently torn from the air and drawn into the obsidian construct. Mark cried out, a sound of pain and liberation as the malignant force that had haunted him was wrenched away, sucked into the vessel with an almost palpable finality. And then, as abruptly as it had surged, the light subsided. The tempest of energy dissipated into an eerie calm, leaving behind only a steady, gentle glow emanating from the obsidian vessel. In that quiet aftermath, the team stood in stunned silence, their hearts pounding and their minds reeling from the experience. Mark slumped to the ground, tears streaming down his face as he whispered, It's gone. I can feel it receding." Alicia lowered the vessel, exhaustion and relief intermingling in her eyes. "The curse is bound," she said softly, her voice trembling with both sorrow and triumph. "For now, at least, it is contained." Layla reached out and gently took Mark's hand, her touch a silent promise of support. Evan, who had been monitoring the sensors throughout, confirmed in a hushed tone, "The readings are stable. There's no significant energy left in the clearing, only the gentle pulse of the vessel." As the first light of dawn began to break over the horizon, casting pale gold across the battered ruins, the team gathered in a huddle. The ritual of release had cost them dearly. Not only had Alicia lost a precious piece of her past, but each of them had sacrificed a part of themselves to seal away the ancient darkness. Yet in that painful exchange, they had also forged an unbreakable bond, a shared understanding that some burdens, however heavy, could be borne together. In the quiet aftermath, Alicia recorded in her journal, "We have bound the curse within a new vessel, taking with it fragments of our own souls. The darkness is not destroyed, but contained. Its influence lingers in our memories and in the silent spaces between our hearts, a reminder that even when we triumph, the price of victory can be profound." The team spent the following days in a state of reflective recovery. The cursed artifact remained secured and silent, its malevolent hum replaced by the steady glow of the obsidian vessel, a beacon of ambiguous hope. Though the ritual of release had not eradicated the ancient curse entirely, it had shifted the balance. The darkness was now confined, its power curtailed by the sacrifices of those who dared to stand against it. As they prepared to return to their research and rebuild what had been lost, each member carried a quiet resilience born of shared struggle. The uncharted path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but they had learned that through unity, sacrifice, and the unwavering determination to protect the light, even the most ancient evils could be subdued. Outside, the ruins and the wilderness bore silent witness to their ordeal, while above, the first full rays of dawn illuminated the horizon with the promise of a new day. And in that gentle, hopeful light, the team vowed that the memory of their sacrifice would guide them always, reminding them that, even in the face of darkness, the human spirit could forge a path to redemption seemed to breathe more easily, as if the land, too, could sense the weight lifted from it. The silent temple, long a monument to forgotten curses, had now become the backdrop for their bittersweet victory, a reminder of the power of unity and resilience in the face of unspeakable darkness. The teeming camp, quiet now, but still littered with remnants of their ordeal, seemed almost like a distant memory. The team, having faced the darkest of forces, had come through not untouched, but transformed. They knew that the fight might never end. How could it, when the shadow of ancient words always lingers nearby? But they also understood that they could stand together to face whatever came next. With the curse bound, for now, into the obsidian vessel that pulsed with an ominous but steady rhythm, it was time for the team to begin their long road to emotional recovery. They would continue their research, document every anomaly, and dig deeper into the untapped mysteries of the ancient world, all while bearers of the legacy left behind in their efforts to contain the darkness. Each step, from here on out, would demand a delicate balance between hope and the knowledge that the darkness was not gone forever. It was simply contained. Yet in the calm of that intervening moment, Alicia didn't just see the burden of their past fight. She saw the quiet promise that even amidst the deepest night, there is always a flicker of light capable of pushing back the shadows. And with that, they stepped forward, united in their vision, into a future forever etched by the lessons learned in defiance of the dark. For now, it was enough. The early morning air carried a heavy stillness as the team gathered for what felt like the next phase of their harrowing journey. Though the binding ritual had forced the curse into containment within the obsidian vessel, unsettling signs had begun to emerge again, a reminder that darkness, once stirred, rarely rests for long. The artifact's once dulled hum now pulsed intermittently, as though it were calling to something deeper and broader than their isolated camp. Alicia stood before a large sensor display in the lab, her eyes scanning data that told a story of renewed energy surges. "There's an anomaly developing," she said, her voice tight with concern. "I'm picking up a series of pulsations that are inconsistent with our previous readings. It's as if the curse isn't content to remain locked away. It's trying to reach out." Evan, poring over his recalibrated instruments, nodded grimly. "The energy signature here. It's not localized. It's diffusing outward, following some kind of ley line beneath the ruins. We might be looking at the beginnings of a wider phenomenon, a network of dark energy that connects this artifact to other ancient sites in the region." Mark, still recovering from his ordeal, yet more alert than before, frowned as he added, "In my dreams, I keep seeing a vast, endless corridor, a chasm of shadow stretching out into an uncharted abyss. I thought it was just the residue of the curse, but now it seems like there's a connection, a gateway that might lead somewhere far beyond these ruins." Layla's fingers danced over her tablet as she cross-referenced her newfound inscription translations with historical records. "I found references to a similar phenomenon in fragmented texts from a lost civilization," she murmured. They spoke of a dark convergence, a moment when the cursed energy would flow like a river through the land, linking multiple relics together as if they were tributaries of one immense, malevolent force. This might be it. Alicia's eyes hardened with determination. We need to investigate these new signals. If the curse is part of a larger network, then containing this one artifact might have only been a temporary reprieve. We must follow the trail, trace these ley lines, and see where they lead. It may be that the true source of this ancient malice lies in the uncharted abyss beyond our current boundaries. With cautious resolve, the team prepared for an expedition beyond the familiar confines of their camp. Under a bruised sky, still heavy with the remnants of last night's storm, they loaded their equipment into rugged vehicles and set off toward the direction indicated by the pulsating energy readings. A remote area at the edge of the excavation site where the terrain grew wild and forgotten. As they drove along a crumbling dirt road, the landscape shifted from cultivated fields to dense, ancient woodland. The further they traveled, the more the air seemed to thicken with a palpable, almost oppressive presence. Evan's instruments buzzed with erratic signals, and Mark's recollections grew increasingly vivid, a recurring vision of a colossal void stretching into darkness, punctuated by flickering, ghostly symbols that beckoned him forward. After several hours of tense travel, they arrived at a clearing dominated by the ruins of a once grand structure, an abandoned temple whose crumbling walls were etched with archaic carvings. Here, in this forgotten place, the energy readings spiked dramatically. Layla's eyes widened as she took in the sight. Faint luminescence danced along the contours of the weathered stone, and deep grooves in the walls bore inscriptions similar to those on the cursed artifact. This must be one of the nodes Holt mentioned, Layla whispered almost reverently. A convergence point where the dark energy gathers and flows between relics. It's as if this temple is a beacon for the curse, a focal point for its power. Alicia stepped forward, her gaze sweeping over the ancient columns and broken statues that littered the clearing. "We need to document everything," she said. "Every carving, every pulse of light. This may be the key to understanding the full scope of the curse, and perhaps even how to finally put an end to it." The team set up their portable sensors and began a painstaking survey of the ruins. Mark, though still haunted by dreams of endless corridors, led a small group along the temple's outer perimeter, his eyes scanning the shifting shadows for any signs of movement. In the eerie half-light, even the sound of their footsteps seemed unnaturally loud, echoing off the stone in a ghostly refrain. Hours passed as the measurements accumulated and Layla's translations grew more complex. Then, as twilight began to fall once more, a sudden, deep rumble shook the ground beneath them. The sensors screamed in unison, and a shimmering column of dark energy burst upward from the heart of the temple ruins. The very air vibrated with the sound of ancient incantations, a resonance that seemed to emanate from the abyss itself. Alicia and the team froze, watching in awed terror as the column of energy rose higher, merging with the darkening sky. "This is it," Alicia murmured, her voice barely audible. "The uncharted abyss. It's opening before our eyes." In that suspended moment, the landscape around them seemed to blur and shift. Shadows lengthened, and the boundary between earth and sky appeared to dissolve as if reality were being rewritten by some unseen force. Mark's heart pounded in his ears, and he could almost hear that haunting whisper from his dreams, an invitation and a warning entwined. "Enter if you dare, but know that the darkness awaits." The team gathered as one, united by a shared determination born of countless hardships. "We've come too far to turn back now," Alicia said firmly, her eyes alight with fierce resolve. "Our journey into this uncharted abyss may be dangerous, but it is the only way to understand and ultimately defeat the curse that has haunted us since the artifact was unearthed." With that declaration, the team secured their equipment, steeled their nerves, and prepared to step into the unknown. The path ahead was shrouded in darkness, its contours uncertain and its dangers unimaginable. But as they advanced toward the towering column of dark energy, each step was driven by a singular hope that by confronting the uncharted abyss, they might finally unravel the ancient secrets, and in doing so, secure a future free from the relentless grasp of the cursed legacy. Under the gathering night, as the ancient temple crumbled around them and the abyss beckoned with silent, insidious promise, the team crossed the threshold into a new, perilous chapter of their ordeal. And as the dark energy surged before them, they knew that the true battle was only just beginning. The team stood at the edge of the ancient temple ruins, staring into the yawning void where the dark energy column had erupted. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation and dread. With every heartbeat, the column pulsed a deep, primordial rhythm that seemed to echo from the very bowels of the earth. Alicia led the group forward. "This is our chance to confront the source," she said, her voice firm despite the tremor of fear that threatened to betray her. "If the curse is a network, this must be the heart, a place where the darkness is not only contained but also nurtured." Mark's steps faltered as he recalled the endless corridor from his nightmares. The image of that shadowy passage, lined with the same pulsating symbols he now saw in the ruins, made his skin crawl. Yet, despite the terror clawing at him, he forced himself to follow. "I'll stay close," he murmured, more to himself than to anyone else. Layla carefully adjusted her portable camera and sensors, her eyes scanning the ruined walls that were etched with intricate carvings. "These symbols, they're like fragments of a forgotten language," she whispered, all mingling with horror. "Every inscription, every groove in this stone, tells a story of ancient rituals meant to bind or unleash something beyond our comprehension." Evan checked his instruments one last time. Energy readings here are off the charts. The ley lines converge at this point, he noted, his voice a blend of scientific excitement and quiet alarm. Whatever is happening here is no accident. Under the murky light of a bruised sky, the team moved cautiously into the temple's crumbling doorway. The passage was dark and narrow, the only light provided by the weak beams of their flashlights, which danced across moss-covered walls and the remnants of once proud statues. Every footstep echoed in the silence, a steady reminder that they were venturing into territory where the laws of nature and time seemed to blur. As they progressed deeper, the temperature dropped sharply. The air felt unnaturally still, as if the darkness itself was holding its breath. Mark led the way, his eyes darting nervously between the flickering shadows that played tricks on his mind. At one point, he stopped suddenly, his face paling as he stared into the distance. I can see it," he stuttered, his voice barely audible over the sound of their footsteps. In the flickering light ahead, he swore he saw a long, dark corridor, endless, ominous, lined with the same spectral symbols that had haunted his dreams. Alicia reached out, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We must keep moving. Our destination is within, at the core of this ruin. There, we may find the key to understanding and perhaps finally ending this curse." Her determination was palpable, a beacon amid the suffocating gloom. The passage opened into a vast subterranean chamber. Here, the architecture soared in broken arches and colossal columns, remnants of a civilization that had long vanished. In the center of the chamber, the dark energy column from earlier had begun to wane, replaced by a more diffuse glow that permeated the space. On the floor, swirling patterns, etched by time or by some other force, seemed to guide the eye toward an altar-like structure carved directly into the rock. Layla knelt beside one of the stone inscriptions, her fingers tracing the ancient glyphs as if trying to read the language of the dead. "This altar, it appears to be a focal point," she said, her voice hushed in reverence. The text Holt mentioned described a ritual site where the forces of light and darkness were meant to balance. Perhaps this is where the curse was originally bound. Evan's sensor readings spiked again as he aimed his device at the altar. "The energy here is volatile, It's almost as if the altar is trying to channel something, he observed. I'm getting intermittent pulses, like it's receiving a signal from somewhere in the depths. Alicia stepped forward and placed her hand on the cool stone. We must document every detail, she said. Our hope is to decipher the ancient ritual that once sealed this curse. If we can understand how it was bound here, we might find a way to end it for good. As the team set up their equipment and began recording, a deep, resonant sound began to vibrate through the chamber, a low, almost imperceptible chant that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. The sound was hypnotic, its rhythm steady and unyielding, as if it were reciting a mantra from ages past. Mark shivered and pulled his jacket tighter, feeling as if unseen eyes were watching from every dark corner. Time seemed to stretch in that chamber. The team worked in hushed urgency, capturing every nuance of the scene. The interplay of light and shadow, the subtle movement of ancient symbols, and the ghostly cadence of that mysterious chant. Layla's recordings reveal that the chant was not random noise. It followed a pattern reminiscent of the incantations from the cursed artifact. It was as if the very spirit of the ruin was calling out, warning them, or perhaps inviting them to complete a ritual left unfinished. Alicia's heart pounded with both fear and resolve. "This is our uncharted abyss," she said softly, her voice trembling slightly. "The darkness here is ancient, born of lost rituals and the ceaseless hunger of malevolent power. We are on the brink of discovering its secret, but we must tread carefully. For every step we take into this darkness, we risk losing a part of ourselves." The team gathered around the altar, each member acutely aware of the stakes. They knew that beyond this point lay not only the answers they sought, but also the potential to awaken forces they might never control. Yet, united by their shared purpose and the unspoken promise of redemption, they pressed onward. In that vast, echoing chamber beneath the ruined temple, the team set the stage for what might be the final confrontation with the ancient curse, a confrontation that would either seal away the darkness once and for all, or unleash it in ways they could scarcely imagine. The uncharted abyss beckoned, and with a collective breath, they stepped deeper into the unknown, determined to face whatever awaited them in the heart of that primordial darkness. The team's hearts hammered as they stepped beyond the threshold of the subterranean chamber. The vast, echoing hall was bathed in a ghostly glow from the shattered skylights above, through which a weak, pallid light filtered. Every footstep reverberated against the cold stone, merging with the distant, rhythmic pulse that seemed to emanate from the very earth beneath them. Alicia led the way, her resolve steeled by the weight of all they had endured. "Stay close," she instructed softly. Every symbol, every whisper on these walls might hold a clue to the curse's origin and its undoing. Mark's eyes, still haunted by his recurring nightmares, darted nervously along the corridor. Shadows danced unpredictably in the flickering light of their portable torches. He muttered, "I can almost see the void again, the endless corridor from my dreams. It's as if this place is alive with the curse." His voice trembled, not solely from fear, but from the stirring of long-buried memories he wished to forget. Layla, clutching her digital recorder and notebook, carefully documented every carving and inscription that adorned the crumbling walls. "These markings are older than any language we know," she whispered in awe. "They speak of rituals to bind and seal ancient forces, forces that must have once been unleashed upon this world." Her voice held both reverence and a trace of dread. Evan trailed behind, his instruments in hand, monitoring the ambient energy that now swelled in waves along the corridor. The readings were erratic yet unmistakable, a series of surges that mimicked the cadence of a heartbeat, as if the ruin itself were pulsing with life. "The energy is rising," he noted. "I'm getting readings that suggest a convergence of ley lines deeper within. Something powerful lies ahead." Their path eventually led them to a narrow passageway whose walls were nearly smooth, worn by the passage of countless years. In the center of the passage, an enormous stone door loomed. a monolithic barrier engraved with intricate patterns and symbols. The door, though partially collapsed at its base, radiated an aura of solemn finality. It seemed to be the barrier that separated the known from the unknown, the threshold to the source of the curse. Alicia placed a trembling hand on the cold surface of the door. "This must be it," she murmured, her breath catching. "Beyond this door lies the heart of the curse, where the dark energy is born and bound." Mark's gaze shifted to the door's engravings, swirling motifs intermingled with jagged, angular symbols that seemed to writhe in the low light. "I've seen these symbols before," he whispered, his voice thick with a mixture of dread and familiarity. "In my dreams, they were the heralds of that endless void." Layla moved closer, carefully photographing every detail. "They tell a story," she said. "A ritual that was meant to imprison a great evil, a vengeful force from another time. But if the curse was only contained, not eradicated, then these markings might reveal how it can be unbound. Or, hopefully, sealed for good." Evan's device beeped urgently, displaying an intense surge in energy as if reacting to their proximity to the stone door. "I'm picking up a massive spike here," he announced, his voice tight with anticipation. "It's as if the door is a capacitor, storing the very force we're trying to understand." Encouraged by their findings, the team prepared to breach the ancient door. Alicia retrieved a chisel and hammer from their equipment stash, tools as old-fashioned as the ruin itself, and with cautious precision began to chip away at the brittle stone. Each strike reverberated in the silent passageway, punctuating the eerie calm with the sound of determination. As fragments of stone tumbled away, a narrow gap appeared, and with it a sudden gust of cold air burst forth, carrying with it the faint aroma of ancient incense and the metallic tang of old blood. The door slowly creaked open, revealing a vast, hidden chamber beyond. Inside, the space was dominated by a colossal altar carved directly into the rock, draped in layers of centuries-old dust, and etched with even more elaborate symbols than those on the door. A dim, unnatural light suffused the chamber, emanating from deep within the altar itself. The light was not warm. It was a cold, blue luminescence that cast long, surreal shadows on the walls. In that moment, the team realized that they had come to the very nexus of the curse, a place where the boundary between our world and an ancient, malevolent force was perilously thin. Alicia stepped forward, her voice barely above a whisper. This altar was once the focal point of an ancient binding ritual. The legends Holt spoke of, they described a ritual meant to imprison an unfathomable darkness. If the curse is to be lifted or contained, this is where we'll find our answer. As the team gathered around the altar, the blue glow pulsed rhythmically, its cadence eerily mirroring the beat of a heart that in the depths of the ruin seemed to echo the collective fears and hopes of everyone present. Mark felt a chill crawl along his spine as the distant, ghostly chant he had heard in his dreams reverberated faintly through the chamber. It was a sound that resonated with loss and longing, a spectral reminder that the abyss was always watching, waiting for a chance to reclaim its hold. Layla carefully unrolled a fragile, weathered scroll she had found among the temple ruins. "This appears to be part of a ritual text," she said, her eyes scanning the ancient script. "It speaks of sacrifice and the binding of darkness, a covenant forged in blood and memory." Her voice quivered as she read aloud, the ancient words rolling off her tongue like a sorrowful melody. "By the sorrow of the ages and the hope of the future, let the shadow be confined, its power tethered to stone and flame. Only through the sacrifice of the heart shall the abyss be sealed." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Alicia's gaze swept over her team, each face etched with resolve and trepidation. "This is our uncharted abyss," she said softly. "It's the source of the cursed energy, a place where the darkness is both imprisoned and alive. We stand at the precipice of a truth that may demand the ultimate sacrifice. In that charged silence, as the blue luminescence of the altar pulsed in time with their own racing hearts, the team understood that their journey into the abyss was more than an expedition. It was a confrontation with the ancient forces that had haunted humanity for centuries. The very air vibrated with the promise of revelations and the threat of untold horrors. And so, united by a shared purpose and the unyielding desire to reclaim the light, they prepared to delve deeper into the chamber's secrets. With every cautious step, they moved closer to the heart of the curse, knowing that the true battle, the battle for their souls, was about to begin. As the chamber's eerie light bathed them in its spectral glow, Alicia took a deep breath and spoke with quiet determination. Let us uncover the truth of this cursed relic, and may our unity be the key to sealing the darkness once and for all. In that moment, as the ancient altar loomed before them and the haunting echoes of the abyss whispered in the shadows, the team stepped forward into the uncharted depths of darkness, where hope and despair danced in an eternal, perilous waltz. Abyss, no matter the cost, we will face this darkness together and, in doing so, finally end the curse that has bound us for so long. The team stood in collective silence for a moment, their hearts beating in unison as they steeled themselves for the next phase of their journey. The air was thick with the weight of the ancient power that lingered, and though dread clawed at the edges of their minds, their resolve was clear. They had come this far. They would not turn back. And as the first steps into the abyss beckoned, they crossed the threshold of the altar's pulsing light, unaware of the true price that this final battle would demand of them. Dawn broke softly over the camp, its gentle light mingling with the bittersweet echoes of a long, tumultuous night. In the aftermath of the ritual of release, the team slowly emerged from the once ominous chamber, each step laden with both relief and the weight of sacrifice. The obsidian vessel, now glowing with a steady, subdued radiance, rested in its isolated enclosure, a silent sentinel containing the darkness that had once threatened to consume them. Alicia stood on the edge of the lab's veranda, her eyes fixed on the horizon as she watched the sun rise. The loss she had endured, the piece of her past that had been sacrificed in the ritual, remained a tender wound. Yet within that ache, she found a strange, resolute hope. She had borne the cost so that the curse might be contained, and in that painful exchange, she discovered an inner strength that she never knew she possessed. Inside the facility, the team gathered in quiet camaraderie. Mark, still fragile but steadily recovering, shared tentative smiles and soft words of gratitude. I feel lighter, he admitted, his voice laced with both sorrow and relief. The voices are gone, or at least they're quieter now. I can finally think again. His eyes, once haunted by the relentless whisper of the abyss, now held a glimmer of possibility. Layla meticulously cataloged the new data, her fingers tracing over the ancient symbols now etched into her memory as much as in her research notes. Our recordings show that the energy fluctuations have stabilized, she reported, her tone measured and hopeful. It seems the ritual has succeeded in binding the curse, at least for now. The text hinted that such a sacrifice would never fully eradicate the darkness, but would contain it, so its influence is no longer free to roam. Her words, filled with scholarly precision, carried an undercurrent of cautious optimism. Evan, ever the pragmatic guardian, reviewed the sensor logs one final time before sealing the data for posterity. We've brought the readings down to near baseline, he confirmed. Our protocols are in place, and the artifact, along with its new vessel, is secure. We must remain vigilant, but we've won a reprieve. His voice, though steady, betrayed the exhaustion of nights spent in relentless monitoring. In a hushed, reflective moment in the common area, the team shared stories of their individual struggles and small victories. The bonds forged through shared terror and perseverance shone through the quiet conversation. They spoke of dreams that had once been filled with darkness and how, gradually, Those dreams gave way to moments of unexpected light, a reminder that hope could be found even in the deepest shadows. Alicia finally addressed the group, her voice soft yet resolute. We set out to unearth a relic of the past, and in doing so, we awakened an ancient curse. Tonight, we have seen the cost of disturbing what was meant to remain hidden. But we have also learned that by uniting our strengths, by sacrificing a part of ourselves, we can reclaim the light from the darkness. We may not have banished the curse entirely, but we have contained it, and in that containment, we have forged a new beginning. As the sun climbed higher, casting warm, golden light over the ruins and the camp, a sense of renewal filled the air. The ancient temple, once a silent witness to lost horrors, now stood as a reminder that even the deepest scars can eventually give way to healing. The cursed artifact remained, its ominous hum now a distant murmur, a constant reminder of the fragile balance between light and darkness. In the days that followed, the team continued their research with newfound purpose. They recorded every anomaly, every slight shift in the artifact's energy, and each measurement served as a reminder of the cost they had paid and the promise of vigilance that would guide them henceforth. New partnerships were formed with experts in the occult and paranormal, and together, they built a foundation of knowledge that could one day serve as a safeguard against similar curses. For Mark, every sunrise was a step away from the nightmares that had once defined him. For Layla, each translated symbol was a key to understanding the ancient language of light and shadow. For Evan, the steady hum of the sensors became the heartbeat of a renewed commitment to protect the fragile line between science and the supernatural. And for Alicia, every morning was a testament to her courage, a promise that, even in the face of unbearable loss, the human spirit would rise again. Standing on that veranda, Alicia whispered softly to the awakening world, "We have learned that hope, however fragile, endures. Even when the darkness seeks to reclaim its hold, the light of our unity, our sacrifice, and our unwavering determination will always guide us toward a new dawn." And as the light grew brighter, chasing away the lingering shadows of the night, the team stepped forward into a future uncertain, yet filled with promise. A future where the curse was contained, and the legacy of their courage would forever be etched in the annals of time will always push it back. The wind rustled through the ruins, carrying the faintest echo of the past, a sound that, perhaps, would never truly be silenced. But for the first time in what felt like an eternity, the team could breathe. The curse, though still confined, would no longer govern their world, and the dark relic that had once so thoroughly defined their lives now sat quietly, its power sealed in its stone vessel. Alicia looked out at the camp, the people she had come to call her family, and at the horizon beyond them. Their journey had not been without unimaginable sacrifices, both seen and unseen. They had endured the worst of what ancient evil could throw at them and emerged not unbroken, but stronger, forged by the darkness, tempered in its cold embrace, but still standing in the light of this new day. And for the first time, Alicia allowed herself to believe in something simple, a future where the horrors of the past could be kept at bay, where humanity might move forward, wiser, and scarred, but infinitely more resilient. The relic was still there, still waiting, but they had learned something invaluable, that even in the deepest shadows, a flicker of light could endure, that hope, once kindled, could spark a new beginning. The chill of the abyss still clung to them as the team emerged from the crumbling ruins of the ancient temple. In the fading twilight, their journey back along the overgrown path felt both triumphant and sorrowful, a bittersweet passage from confrontation to understanding. The dark energy they had witnessed, the spectral voices and shifting symbols, were now etched into their memories as clearly as the scars upon their souls. Alicia led the way, her gaze steady on the distant horizon where the first hints of dawn began to pierce the night. Though the uncharted abyss had offered them its terrible secrets, it had also provided answers. In the depths of that subterranean chamber, beneath a vast, echoing vault of ancient stone, they had discovered the true nature of the curse. It was not a force to be banished entirely, but one that could be contained, and perhaps one day, transformed into a source of protection. Mark walked silently beside her, his steps measured as if each carried the weight of his past and future. His nights were no longer filled with the endless corridors of shadow, but with visions of a light that flickered steadily at the edge of darkness, a promise that he and all of them could rise again. Layla's hands were stained with the ink of translation and discovery, her notebooks heavy with the knowledge of forgotten rituals. Evan's instruments, once screaming in warning, now registered only a soft, steady pulse emanating from the obsidian vessel and the secured artifact. In the quiet moments of the journey back, the team exchanged few words, but each knew that the darkness they had encountered had forever altered them. It was not a victory achieved by the slaying of a monster, but by a hard-won understanding that light and shadow were bound together, forever locked in a delicate, precarious dance. Back at the camp, under the gentle light of morning, they gathered in a restored meeting tent. Exhaustion mingled with a cautious hope as Alicia addressed the group. What we've witnessed in the abyss was not the end of the curse. It was its true nature. The darkness has always been a part of our world, and our task is not to obliterate it, but to learn to contain and transform it. Her voice carried both the weight of loss and the promise of renewal. Layla stepped forward, holding up the fragmentary translations and ancient texts that now offered clues for a counter-ritual, a final covenant that might not only contain the curse permanently, but also convert its dark energy into a protective force. "We now have the knowledge," she said, her tone soft but resolute. "Our research shows that the ancient civilization believed in a cycle of destruction and rebirth. If we can honor that cycle, if we can bind this curse with our collective strength and wisdom, we can transform its power into a shield for those who live in the light." Mark added quietly, "I still carry the echoes of that darkness, but I no longer fear it as I once did. Instead, I see it as a reminder of the fragility of our world and the strength we find in unity." His words, spoken with both vulnerability and determination, resonated deeply with the others. Evan, ever the pragmatist, summarized, "We'll secure the artifact and the obsidian vessel in a dedicated research facility where we can continue to monitor and study them. And we'll work on a final binding ritual, one that incorporates every lesson we've learned. This won't be a cure-all. Darkness and light will always coexist, but it can be a promise that we are not helpless in the face of ancient malice." In the days that followed, the team labored to set up a new protocol. They expanded their network of collaborators to include experts in occult studies, advanced materials, and even renewable energy physics, a multidisciplinary effort to understand and harness the legacy of the cursed artifact. Each discovery, each small breakthrough, was recorded meticulously, building a foundation for a future where the curse would be transformed from a harbinger of despair into a beacon of protection. On the eve of their planned final ritual, the camp was filled with a palpable, hopeful energy. Under a star-strewn sky, Alicia stood before the team, her eyes reflecting both grief for what was lost and an unyielding determination for what was to come. "Tonight, we take the final step," she declared. "We will not let the curse define us. Instead, we'll bind it, and in doing so, we'll create a new legacy. One that honors our past, protects our future, and reminds us that even in the darkest hours, hope endures." As the ritual commenced, the team's voices rose in unison, their words a blend of ancient incantations and personal affirmations. The air shimmered with energy, and the obsidian vessel glowed with a steady, almost comforting light. In that transcendent moment, it seemed as if the boundaries between the curse and their collective will dissolve. The darkness, long a harbinger of despair, was transformed, its malevolent energy coalescing into a shield of resilience and renewal. In the quiet aftermath of the ritual, As the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, the team gathered once more on the camp's veranda. The cursed artifact now lay dormant, its ominous hum replaced by a gentle, rhythmic pulse, a heartbeat not of evil, but of a hard-fought victory. Though they knew that the struggle between light and shadow was eternal, in that moment they embraced a new legacy, a promise that through knowledge, unity, and sacrifice, even the deepest darkness could be reformed into a force for good. Alicia gazed out at the awakening world, her heart swelling with quiet triumph. "We have built something lasting here," she murmured. "A new covenant between us and the shadows, a testament to our resolve that the light of hope, no matter how fragile, will always guide us forward." And so, as the sun climbed higher and the ruins of the ancient temple stood as a silent witness to their journey, the team stepped into a future defined not by the curse they had once feared, but by the enduring promise of renewal, a new legacy born from the unyielding courage of those who dared to confront the abyss. In the weeks that followed the final binding ritual, the camp, once a nexus of terror and uncertainty, gradually transformed into a beacon of cautious optimism. The cursed artifact lay dormant in its secure chamber, its low, steady pulse now a gentle reminder of the battle fought and the legacy forged in its wake. Yet as the team resumed their work and prepared to share their findings with the wider world, an undercurrent of apprehension remained, a silent acknowledgement that darkness, however bound, never truly disappears. Alicia spent long hours in the lab, poring over newly gathered data and piecing together the fragments of ancient texts that had once foretold this moment. Every anomaly was re-examined, every sensor reading scrutinized, not merely to confirm their victory, but to understand the intricate dance of energies that had allowed them to transform a malevolent curse into a shield of hope. Her notes overflowed with detailed sketches of the obsidian vessel and its protective sigils, along with personal reflections on the price they had all paid. In those quiet moments, she realized that their triumph was not a conclusion, but the beginning of a new chapter in the eternal struggle between light and shadow. Mark, once haunted by relentless nightmares and the suffocating grip of the curse, now found himself on a slow road to healing. Although the vestiges of darkness still whispered in the recesses of his mind, he was learning to find strength in vulnerability. He began sharing his experiences more openly during team meetings, his words a testament to both his personal recovery and the collective resilience that had carried them through the darkest hours. His journal, filled with raw and honest entries, evolved into a chronicle of hope, a narrative that would inspire others who might someday face their own battles with the unknown. Layla, whose fervent scholarship had uncovered the ancient incantations and subtle inscriptions that had guided their ritual, continued her work with renewed determination. She tirelessly cross-referenced the faded texts with modern theories of energy and symbolism, dreaming of a future where the secrets of the past might be harnessed not to inflict pain, but to safeguard humanity. Her research papers, laden with both meticulous detail and heartfelt passion, began to circulate among a growing network of experts in occult studies and paranormal research, sparking cautious optimism in circles that had long dismissed such matters as superstition. Evan, the pragmatic force behind their technical endeavors, devoted himself to perfecting their monitoring systems. With new protocols and more sophisticated instruments in place, he ensured that the energy readings remained stable and that any future anomalies would be detected well in advance. His calm, methodical approach had become the bedrock upon which the team's renewed efforts were built, a promise that they would never again be caught unprepared. Together, the team forged a new legacy. They established a dedicated research facility adjacent to the ruins, a place where science and the arcane coexisted, where lessons from the past were used to forge a safer future. Here, under a canopy of ancient trees and a sky perpetually shifting between storm and sunshine, they trained new investigators and scholars, sharing the hard-won knowledge of their journey. Their work was not merely an academic exercise. It was a call to vigilance, a reminder that the boundary between light and darkness was delicate and ever-shifting. Yet, as they prepared to look outward and share their discoveries with the world, a quiet voice in the back of Alicia's mind reminded her that some mysteries were infinite. Late one night, while reviewing sensor logs and re-examining the artifact's dormant pulse, she noticed a subtle, almost imperceptible fluctuation, a brief, rhythmic surge that seemed to hint at something unresolved. Had the curse truly been contained, or was it lying in wait, gathering strength for another resurgence? She brought this concern to the team. In the hushed atmosphere of their next meeting, surrounded by stacks of research papers and the soft glow of computer screens, Alicia spoke. Our work has given us hope, but it has also shown us that the forces we faced are ancient and adaptable. We must remain vigilant. Even now, the artifact's quiet pulse reminds us that darkness can be patient. Mark nodded, his expression reflective. I may have learned to live with the memories of that darkness, but I will never forget the lessons it taught us. We must be prepared to face whatever comes next. Layla, ever the scholar, added, and we must continue to seek understanding. The text suggests that what we've bound here is only one facet of a much larger tapestry. There may be other relics, other curses hidden in the folds of history, waiting for someone to unearth them. Our legacy must be one of both caution and enlightenment. Evan closed his laptop with a determined sigh. Then our next horizon is clear, to build a bridge between what we have learned and the world at large. To ensure that the knowledge we've gained can protect not only us, but future generations from the shadows of the past. That night, under a star-studded sky that seemed to hum with silent promise, the team stood together on the veranda of their new facility. The ancient ruins in the distance bore the marks of time, yet they also shone with a quiet dignity, a testament to the enduring resilience of a world that had weathered centuries of both wonder and woe. Alicia looked out toward the horizon, where the first light of dawn mingled with the deep blue of night. We have built something lasting here, she said softly. A new legacy not defined by the curse we faced, but by the hope we nurtured in its aftermath. Our journey will continue, and we will face the future, however uncertain, with courage, unity, and an unyielding commitment to protect the light. As the sun rose higher, bathing the landscape in warm, golden hues, the team dispersed to begin their day's work. Each step forward was a promise that no matter how deep the darkness, the human spirit would always find a way to rise again. And in the echo of that bright new dawn, they carried with them the belief that every horizon, no matter how shadowed, held the potential for a future defined by renewal and hope. The new facility, nestled against the timeless backdrop of ancient ruins, had become more than just a research center. It was a living archive of triumphs and scars, a testament to the team's unyielding quest for understanding in the face of darkness. In the weeks following their monumental breakthrough at the temple, life at the facility settled into a steady rhythm, one punctuated by rigorous data collection, late-night discussions, and moments of quiet introspection. Alicia stood in her modest office, overlooking the vast landscape where the ruins met the wild expanse of nature. The soft hum of machinery and the distant call of birds formed a gentle counterpoint to the memory of turbulent nights. Though the cursed artifact lay dormant in its secure chamber, its legacy was far from forgotten. It had reshaped them all, etched in Mark's guarded smiles, in Layla's determined scribbles, and in Evan's meticulous sensor logs. And it had ignited within them a resolve to forge a future where knowledge would serve as both shield and beacon. She paused, letting her words sink in. But we also must remember that the artifact isn't our enemy. It's a relic, a messenger from a forgotten time. Our duty now is to ensure its power is used to illuminate, not to destroy. Mark, sitting at the edge of the long table, offered a quiet nod. I used to see nothing but the abyss, he admitted, his voice a mix of reflection and relief. Now, I see that every shadow carries the potential for light. It's a lesson I had to learn the hard way, but it's one I won't forget. Layla, her eyes bright with the fire of discovery, added, "I'm still decoding the deeper layers of the texts. There are hints that this artifact was part of a network, a series of relics, each containing a fragment of the ancient curse. What we've done here may be just the beginning of understanding that larger tapestry." Her words carried the promise of further exploration, a roadmap to uncover mysteries that had once seemed insurmountable. Evan, always the practical mind behind their efforts, closed his tablet with a thoughtful sigh. The instruments now show stability, but I can't shake the feeling that we're standing on the edge of something vast. Our protocols are stronger, but we must never let our guard down. The curse may be bound, but its influence lingers in the tiniest anomaly, a stray sensor spike, a fleeting whisper in the night. His tone was measured, yet beneath it lay the burden of knowledge gleaned from many sleepless nights. As the meeting drew to a close, Alicia shared her vision for the future. Our legacy is not defined by the darkness we've contained, but by the light we choose to create. We are building a bridge between the arcane and the modern, a foundation of knowledge that can protect future generations from the shadows of the past. She looked around at the faces of her colleagues, each one etched with determination and hope. Let's commit ourselves to this cause. We will continue our research, share our findings with the world, and remain ever vigilant. The curse may have been bound, but our journey into understanding its origins and ensuring it never rises again is just beginning. Outside, the facility's doors opened onto a landscape reborn in the gentle glow of morning. The ancient ruins, once silent witnesses to untold horrors, now stood as monuments of history and resilience. Birds began to sing, and the wind carried the faint, hopeful promise of renewal. In that moment, the team dispersed to their respective tasks with a renewed sense of purpose, a commitment to turn the lessons of the past into a brighter future. Mark returned to his daily routines with a sense of cautious optimism. Though the nightmares had not entirely disappeared, they had softened into memories that fueled his determination to honor the journey he had survived. Layla continued her translation work, now driven not only by academic curiosity, but by the conviction that the ancient texts held the key to safeguarding humanity. Evan refined the facility's monitoring systems, determined to capture every nuance of the energy that still pulsed from the relic. And Alicia, ever the guiding light, documented every breakthrough and setback in a journal that had become both a scientific record and a personal chronicle of loss and hope. In the weeks that turned into months, the facility evolved into a center of interdisciplinary study, where archaeologists, physicists, and scholars of the occult gathered to unravel the intricate interplay between ancient curses and modern science. Their research began to attract attention. Skeptics and believers alike debated the implications of their findings, and conferences buzzed with discussions of a world where the supernatural and the scientific converged. Yet amid the accolades and the growing body of knowledge, the team never forgot the price they had paid. Every time Alicia closed her journal, she was reminded of that final, agonizing sacrifice, the piece of her past that was now lost forever. But in that loss, she found a deeper resolve, a commitment to ensure that such darkness would never again hold sway over the innocent. Late one evening, as the sky blushed with the soft hues of twilight, Alicia stood on the veranda and looked out at the distant horizon. The sun was setting behind the ancient temple, its silhouette a blend of shadow and light. In that quiet moment, she whispered to herself, "We have forged a new legacy, a future built on the promise that even in the darkest of times, the light endures." The words, carried by the gentle evening breeze, seemed to echo across the land, a vow that no matter how deep the shadows, hope would always rise again. And so, as the facility buzzed with quiet activity and the world beyond slowly began to take notice of their work, the team stepped forward into a future filled with possibilities. They had learned that every curse, no matter how potent, could be met with knowledge, unity, and the unbreakable strength of the human spirit. With each sunrise, they continued to build on their legacy, protecting the line between darkness and light, and ensuring that the uncharted abyss of the past would never again claim its due. In the reflections of tomorrow, amidst the blend of ancient echoes and modern resolve, their journey continued, an unending quest to transform sorrow into hope and darkness into a beacon for all who dare to seek the light. Late one autumn evening, as dusk bled into night over the new facility, the quiet hum of research was interrupted by an unexpected alert. Evan's sensor array, now so carefully calibrated that its steady readings had become almost a comfort, began to pulse erratically once more. A series of sharp spikes, distinct and rhythmic, flashed across his monitor, breaking the calm that had settled over the camp. Evan leaned forward, his brow furrowing. "Something's happening again," he murmured, his voice tinged with both curiosity and apprehension. He rechecked the instruments, and the readings confirmed it. There was a new surge of energy emanating from the direction of the secured, cursed artifact. Alicia, who had been poring over historical data in her office, was immediately alerted by the commotion. Rushing to the lab, she found Evan standing before his workstation, eyes wide as he gestured toward the data. "It's as if the artifact is." Speaking again, he said, the tremor in his voice betraying his unease. "These spikes, look, they're almost like a pattern." Layla joined them, her fingers flying over her tablet as she cross-referenced the anomaly with her own recent translations. "I'm detecting something familiar in the pattern," she said softly. "It's reminiscent of the incantations we recorded during the last binding ritual, but with a variation. Almost as if the curse is trying to rewrite its own signature." Mark, who had been quietly recovering and reflecting on his past ordeals, entered the lab. His once-shadowed eyes now carried a cautious spark of vigilance. "I had another dream last night," he confessed in a hushed tone. "This time, I was back in that endless corridor, but the walls were covered in new symbols, ones I'd never seen before. They pulsed in time with these readings." He paused, his gaze distant as if reliving the nightmare. "It felt like a warning, a signal that the darkness isn't done with us." The team exchanged anxious glances. The sense of uneasy triumph from their previous victory had begun to fray at the edges. Alicia's mind raced through the possibilities. Had the ritual merely subdued the curse, or had it inadvertently provided a foothold for its resurgence? "We need to get to the source of these fluctuations," Alicia declared, her voice firm despite the mounting tension. "If the artifact is reactivating, even in a subdued form, we must understand why. This may not be a simple case of containment failing. It could be that the curse is evolving." Under a leaden sky, the team assembled their gear and ventured out to the containment chamber where the cursed artifact and its new vessel were held. The facility's corridors, usually bathed in a reassuring artificial glow, now seemed dim and foreboding, as if reluctant to reveal their secrets. Evan's handheld sensors confirmed the anomaly was strongest within the chamber, where the obsidian vessel pulsed gently, a heartbeat that had grown irregular, almost as if it were struggling against an internal force. Inside the chamber, Alicia approached the glass case with a mix of determination and trepidation. The artifact lay there, seemingly inert, but the soft blue luminescence from the obsidian vessel had shifted, its rhythm uneven. Layla moved to the side, reactivating her digital microscope and running scans along the vessel's surface. "There," she whispered, pointing to a cluster of newly formed, barely visible inscriptions that had not been there before. "These markings, they're evolving. It's as if the vessel is trying to communicate a new message." Alicia's heart pounded. "We need to document every detail," she said. "Evan, record the sensor data, every spike, every fluctuation. Layla, photograph and scan these new symbols. Mark, I want you to describe what you felt in your dreams last night in as much detail as you can." Mark took a deep breath and began recounting his vision. "I was in a corridor that stretched into infinity. The walls were inscribed with symbols, new ones, chaotic and shifting. In the center, a pulsating light beckoned me, and I felt a mix of dread and an almost irresistible pull. It was as if the darkness was trying to call me back, to make me part of itself again. His voice wavered, but his eyes shone with grim resolve. As the team set to work, the atmosphere in the chamber grew, charged with possibility and danger. Evan's devices picked up a rhythmic pattern, a cadence that matched the new inscriptions, a haunting melody of energy that seemed to blend the ancient with the unknown. Layla's translation suggested that the new symbols were part of a forgotten dialect, one that hinted at renewal and transformation, a promise that the curse could change, if only it were understood. Alicia realized that their victory over the curse might have been only temporary, a lull before a new phase. "This is not a failure of our containment," she said quietly, addressing the team. "It's an evolution. The curse is adapting. We must be prepared to confront it again, perhaps on a scale we never anticipated." Outside, the wind howled as if echoing her words, and the night sky was streaked with restless clouds. The facility's monitors continued to capture the shifting energy patterns, a symphony of anomalies that spoke of an ancient force reawakening with a renewed purpose. Each team member, bound by the trials they had endured, now felt the weight of a future where vigilance would be eternal. In that moment, as the team gathered around the obsidian vessel with renewed determination, they understood that their journey was far from over. The darkness had not been vanquished. It had merely taken on a new form, an unsettled echo of its former self. And as they prepared to delve deeper into this evolving mystery, each knew that the path ahead would demand sacrifices and courage beyond measure. Alicia turned to her colleagues, her eyes steeled with resolve. "We will continue our research, and we will not let this curse define our future. Every anomaly we document, every symbol we decipher, brings us one step closer to understanding, and ultimately, to ensuring that the darkness remains forever contained." With that declaration echoing in the silent chamber, the team set forth into the uncharted night, determined to chase down the flickering echoes of ancient malice and transform uncertainty into a beacon of hope. The unsteady pulse of the obsidian vessel was a reminder that while the darkness might be evolving, the light of their unity and resolve would always guide them forward. And so, amid the unsettled echoes and shifting energies, the journey into tomorrow began anew, a testament to the enduring struggle between the ancient curse and the indomitable spirit of those who dared to stand against it. The unsettled echoes of the night lingered in every corner of the facility as the team gathered once again in the quiet of the control room. The dim glow of the monitors illuminated faces etched with fatigue and resolve. It was now clear. The anomaly they had witnessed was not an isolated resurgence, but part of a larger, more intricate pattern, a convergence of energies that spread like unseen veins beneath the ancient ruins and beyond. Evan's fingers danced over the controls, drawing out real-time graphs that spiked and dipped in hypnotic cadence. "Look at this," he said, his voice low and tense. "The energy isn't just localized to the artifact chamber anymore. It's tracking along a series of ley lines that intersect beneath our very feet. It's as if the darkness is networking, reorganizing itself." Alicia studied the data, her eyes narrowing in concentration. It appears that our earlier binding ritual only delayed the inevitable. The curse is evolving. Our artifact is now acting as a beacon, a node in a far larger grid of ancient power. Her words hung heavy in the air, each syllable a reminder of the battle still ahead. Mark, leaning against the wall, exhaled slowly. "Every night, I still see that corridor in my dreams, the endless void lined with shifting symbols. It's like a siren call, drawing me back to that darkness. I thought the ritual had weakened it, but now, it seems the curse is reasserting itself, trying to rebuild its network." Layla's gaze shifted between her tablet and the ancient scrolls spread out on the table. "I've been re-examining the inscriptions we found on the new vessel," she murmured, tracing a finger along faded symbols that glowed faintly on her screen. "There's a recurring motif, a promise of convergence, of multiple relics coming together to form a single, unstoppable force. The texts speak of a great binding, where isolated curses merge into one entity, amplifying their power exponentially." A heavy silence fell over the room as the gravity of her discovery sank in. Evan tapped a command into his console. "I'm initiating a full-spectrum scan of the entire complex. We need to know if there are any other nodes out there. If this is just one piece of a larger puzzle, our efforts might be in vain unless we address the whole network." The monitors flickered, and soon a map of the surrounding area materialized on the central screen. Lines of fluctuating energy spread out in multiple directions from the facility, converging at points that corresponded to long-forgotten ruins and derelict structures. One node in particular, marked in a deep, unsettling red, lay near an abandoned fortress on the outskirts of the region. Alicia's eyes glistened with determination. That red node, if it's as active as it seems, it could be the master control of this network. We need to mount an expedition to that site immediately. The team exchanged glances. There was no denying the peril ahead. The convergence of shadows threatened not only their sanctuary, but possibly the entire region. Yet, amid the dread, a flicker of hope sparked in their united resolve. They had already tasted victory over the curse, and they would not let it rebuild its power unchecked. Within hours, a small, elite group, Alicia, Mark, Layla, and a couple of field operatives, set out toward the abandoned fortress. The journey took them along crumbling roads flanked by dense forests and ruins that whispered the secrets of ancient battles. The sky overhead was a tumult of shifting grays and bruised blues, as if the heavens themselves were embroiled in the conflict. As they approached the fortress, the air grew colder and thicker, carrying an almost electric charge. The fortress loomed before them, a massive, ruined structure half swallowed by nature, its walls scarred by time and neglect. Evan's prearranged updates had warned of unusually high energy readings in the area, and now, standing before the fortress, the team could feel the oppressive weight of dormant power. Mark shivered, his gaze drifting to a dark archway that led into the fortress's inner courtyard. "It feels like walking into a tomb," he whispered, his voice a mix of awe and trepidation. "Everything here exudes a kind of quiet menace." Layla activated her portable scanner, and as data streamed onto her device, her eyes widened. "The readings are off the charts," she exclaimed softly. "This is more than just residual energy. This is active, pulsing power. It's as if the fortress is the heart of the curse's network." Inside the fortress, the corridors were a labyrinth of decaying stone and flickering torchlight. Every step echoed, the sound swallowed by the thick silence that reigned over the place. Deep within, they found a grand hall dominated by a massive, intricately carved pillar. The pillar, covered in the same arcane symbols they had encountered at the dig site, pulsed with an eerie, crimson glow. It was clear this was the node, the master conduit of the cursed network. Alicia stepped forward, her voice resolute despite the pounding of her heart. "This pillar is our answer," she declared. "It's the anchor point. If we can disrupt its energy flow, we might break the network, render the curse inert once and for all." Mark, still visibly shaken by the memories of his haunted dreams, nodded. "I'm ready," he said, his voice firm. "We have to try, even if it means confronting the darkness directly." Layla carefully examined the pillar, her fingers brushing over the worn inscriptions. The texts speak of a ritual of unbinding, a countermeasure designed to sever the ties between the cursed relics and the dark force they harbor. But it requires precise synchronization of energy, a delicate balance of sacrifice and willpower. We must channel our collective focus into disrupting this node. The team quickly set up their portable equipment around the pillar. Evan's instruments, now more sophisticated and sensitive than before, began to relay data that painted a picture of turbulent, almost chaotic energy swirling around the stone. "We need to initiate the counter-ritual now," Alicia instructed, her eyes fixed on the pillar's pulsating glow. Under the oppressive silence of the ancient hall, the team joined hands in a tight circle around the pillar. Drawing upon the lessons of their past battles, they began to recite the incantations, ancient words and modern resolve intermingled into a single, potent force. Their voices, trembling at first, gradually grew stronger, resonating with a power born of unity and shared sacrifice. As the incantation reached its climax, the pillar's glow flickered violently. The red hue deepened, and the energy readings soared to unprecedented levels before beginning a precipitous decline. A deafening silence filled the hall, as if time itself were holding its breath. Then, with a final, resounding surge, the pillar's power collapsed inward, the pulsating glow fading to a soft, steady light. For several long, heart-stopping moments, the team stood frozen, the silence punctuated only by their ragged breaths. Slowly, the oppressive energy in the fortress began to dissipate, leaving behind a stillness that was both eerie and liberating. Alicia exhaled shakily, a smile of weary triumph slowly emerging. "It's done," she whispered. "The network, it's broken. The curse has been severed from its central node." Mark closed his eyes, feeling a profound relief wash over him. In that moment, the echoes of his nightmares receded, replaced by a tentative hope. Layla recorded every detail, her hands steady despite the adrenaline surging through her. Evan's devices confirmed what they had hoped. The energy readings were stabilizing, the chaotic surges replaced by a calm, measured rhythm. As they emerged from the fortress, the dark skies began to clear, and the first light of dawn bathed the ancient structure in soft hues of gold and lavender. The curse's relentless network, once a menacing force poised to engulf them, was now fragmented, a collection of isolated, weakened echoes that could be contained and studied. Back at the facility, the team gathered to review the data and to share in the hard-won victory. Though they knew that darkness could never be entirely eradicated, they had taken a decisive step toward reclaiming control over it. The experience had changed them all. Etched into their memories was the reminder that the struggle between light and shadow was eternal, but so too was the human spirit's capacity for courage and unity. Alicia, looking out over the horizon where the ruins met the rising sun, whispered, "This is not the end, but a new beginning, a legacy that we build together, one that ensures hope endures even in the face of the darkest abyss." And as the sun ascended higher, bathing the world in its warm embrace, the team stood united, a testament to the power of collective resolve, the unyielding strength of hope, and the promise that even in a world scarred by ancient curses, the light would always find a way to shine through. The night air was heavy with anticipation as the team gathered in the main hall of the new facility, a converted, century-old building that had become their sanctuary and research hub. The data from the previous expedition had confirmed it. The dark energy network, though disrupted at the fortress, was already stirring anew. The readings indicated that one final surge was imminent, one that might either seal the curse forever or unleash it in a way none of them could imagine. Alicia paced slowly in the hushed room, her eyes fixed on the projection screen where Evan's latest graphs pulsed in time with her quickening heartbeat. "The anomaly is rising faster than before," she murmured. "Every sensor, every reading. It's as if the curse is gathering its strength for one final push." Mark, now steadied by months of arduous recovery and a hard-won inner strength, sat near the window. His gaze was distant, yet determined. "I still see that endless corridor in my dreams," he said softly. "But now it's different. There's a flicker of light at the end, a promise that maybe we can finally end this nightmare." Layla, poring over a weathered manuscript spread out on a scarred table, traced a sequence of symbols with trembling fingers. I've cross-referenced these inscriptions with everything we have, she explained, her voice a mix of hope and apprehension. They describe a ritual so powerful that it can not only sever the ties of the curse, but convert its very nature, transforming this ancient malevolence into a force that shields rather than destroys. Evan's steady voice cut through the silence. The instruments confirm it. There's a definitive spike expected within the next few hours. This is our window, the final moment when the curse will try to consolidate its power. Alicia stopped pacing and turned to face her team, her eyes alight with a fierce determination. Then we must act, she declared. We have prepared for this day for too long. Tonight, we perform the final rite, a ritual that, if successful, will bind the curse permanently, transforming its energy into a shield that protects us and this land from the darkness. The plan was intricate and perilous. The ritual required not only the precise arrangement of ancient sigils and artifacts, the obsidian vessel, the cursed relic, and fragments of the original stone from the temple, but also the willingness of each team member to offer a part of themselves. The sacrifice was not measured in blood or life, but in memories and aspects of identity that defined them. In the softly lit ceremonial chamber they had prepared, a room with exposed stone walls and a domed ceiling where a skylight allowed a single beam of moonlight to fall upon a central altar, the team arranged their tools with meticulous care. Candles were placed at each cardinal point, forming a circle of light. Evan and Layla recalibrated the energy conduits, ensuring every sensor was locked on the altar. Mark and Alicia prepared themselves mentally, each drawing upon the reservoir of their past experiences, both joyous and tragic. Alicia stepped forward and, with a steady hand, lifted a ceremonial dagger inscribed with protective runes. Tonight, she intoned, we reclaim the legacy of our ancestors and the hope of tomorrow. We offer our memories, our strengths, and even our sorrows, that the curse may be transmuted and bound. Her voice resonated with both grief and resolve. One by one, each team member approached the altar. Layla recited passages from the ancient texts in a language that was as old as time, her words carrying the weight of lost civilizations. Mark, his voice wavering with both pain and determination, spoke of the darkness he had endured and the light he now yearned to see. Evan focused on the instruments, whispering technical affirmations that merged science with the mysticism of the rite. And Alicia, as the leader, invoked the final incantation, a plea for unity and the transformation of malevolence into protection. As the ritual reached its zenith, the air in the chamber grew unnaturally cold. The candles flickered wildly, and a palpable energy surged through the room. The obsidian vessel at the center of the altar began to glow with a deep, pulsing blue light, its radiance intensifying with each recited verse. The cursed relic, though securely stored away, seemed to pulse in tandem with the ritual, as if its dark power were being drawn into the collective sacrifice. A sudden, almost deafening hum filled the chamber. The team's vision blurred as they felt their inner selves being gently, inexorably pulled from within, a part of their essence merging into the ritual. Alicia's eyes closed as a wave of memories, a montage of laughter, loss, and love flashed before her. For a long, agonizing moment, it felt as if the very air were thick with the weight of every emotion they had ever known. Then, as if the cosmos itself had exhaled, the hum subsided. The blue glow of the obsidian vessel steadied into a calm, rhythmic pulse, a heartbeat that was not of the darkness, but of something new, a protective force born from sacrifice and united will. The energy readings dropped dramatically, the tumult of ancient malevolence quelled into a serene, measured cadence. Slowly, the team opened their eyes. Mark was the first to speak, his voice filled with wonder and relief. I feel it. The voices, they're gone. Instead, there's a warmth, a reassurance that I haven't felt in so long. His eyes, once haunted by the abyss, now held a spark of hope. Layla's scanner confirmed that the energy was now stable, contained within the vessel in a form that the sensors could barely register, a soft, enduring pulse that radiated protective energy. Evan's devices, which had predicted chaos, now displayed a steady baseline. "We did it," he said, his voice a blend of scientific satisfaction and quiet astonishment. Alicia lowered the ceremonial dagger and, with tears glistening in her eyes, whispered, "We have transformed the curse. It no longer seeks to destroy. It seeks to protect, to serve as a reminder that even in the darkest of times, our sacrifices can pave the way for hope." Outside, the first rays of dawn began to seep over the horizon, casting a gentle glow on the ancient ruins and the new facility alike. The storm that had once raged now lay subdued, replaced by a calm that was both tentative and triumphant. In that quiet moment, the team, scarred yet unbowed, felt the weight of their journey lifting, replaced by a resolve to build a future defined not by the curses of the past, but by the hope they had forged together. In the days that followed, the transformed energy of the obsidian vessel was carefully monitored and studied. The team documented every change, every subtle shift, building a new body of knowledge that bridged ancient lore with modern science. Their work inspired collaboration with experts worldwide, and slowly, the legacy of the cursed artifact evolved into a beacon of resilience, a symbol of the human capacity to confront and transform even the most insidious darkness. And so, as the sun rose higher each day, casting long, golden shadows over the land, the team's new legacy took root, a promise that the light of unity, sacrifice, and hope would always triumph over the encroaching night. In the quiet reflections of that final rite, they had not only bound an ancient curse, but had also woven a tapestry of endurance, proving that even the deepest scars can, with time and courage, give way to a future bright with possibility. With hearts emboldened and eyes fixed on tomorrow, they stepped forward into a new dawn, ready to face whatever challenges might lie ahead, secure in the knowledge that the legacy they had built would stand as a testament to the enduring power of hope. Months later, the ancient ruins and the once cursed artifact were now part of a living legacy, a research center where the past and the present converged in careful harmony. The darkness that had once threatened to consume them had been contained, its malignant energy transformed into a measured pulse of protective power. Yet the scars of that long night and the countless sacrifices made remained etched in every heart. Alicia stood on the veranda of the new facility at sunrise, watching as the soft light spilled over the landscape. The ruins of the ancient temple, once a symbol of terror, had grown serene in the gentle glow of morning. The obsidian vessel, now securely enshrined in a specially designed chamber, pulsed rhythmically with a calming blue light, a heartbeat born of sacrifice and unity. It was a reminder that even the deepest darkness could be reformed into a beacon of hope. Inside, the team gathered for their daily briefing, their faces reflecting a mix of exhaustion and quiet determination. Mark, whose journey from possession to recovery had been fraught with anguish, now spoke with a cautious optimism. "I still see remnants of that endless corridor in my dreams," he admitted, his voice soft. "But now, it's different. I see flashes of light, moments of warmth that remind me I can overcome the shadow." Layla, ever the scholar, displayed her latest findings on a holographic display. The newly deciphered texts, compiled from fragmented ancient manuscripts, hinted at a vast network of relics, each containing a piece of the old curse, yet also capable of channeling protective energy. "Our research shows that the curse was never meant to be eradicated completely," she explained. "Instead, it was intended as a balance, a duality of creation and destruction. What we've done here is transform that balance into a safeguard. The dark energy is now a part of a larger matrix that can be monitored and maybe even harnessed for the greater good." Evan, the pragmatic backbone of the operation, reviewed the sensor data one final time before archiving it for future reference. "Our instruments now register a steady, almost imperceptible baseline of energy, he said, a hint of relief in his tone. We've managed to contain the fluctuations to a level that poses no immediate threat. But let this be a reminder, vigilance is our constant companion. We can't afford to let our guard down. Alicia took a deep breath and addressed the group, her voice firm yet filled with reflective warmth. What we have built here is more than a solution, it's a legacy. Every sacrifice we made, every sleepless night, every painful memory has led us to this moment. We have turned a curse into a lesson, and that lesson is that even the darkest of forces can be reformed by our collective will. In the weeks that followed, the facility became a hub of interdisciplinary collaboration. Archaeologists, physicists, occult scholars, and engineers worked side by side, uncovering new layers of ancient lore while refining the methods that had once saved them. Their breakthroughs began to attract global attention, not just as a marvel of scientific achievement, but as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Conferences, publications, and collaborative projects sprang up, each a small victory against the shadows of the past. Mark found solace in mentoring new recruits, sharing his hard-won wisdom about the balance between light and darkness. Remember, he often said, our scars are not just wounds, they are reminders of our strength. The shadows we face may be ancient, but the light within us is timeless. Layla's research evolved into a comprehensive study of ancient curses and protective rituals, her work illuminating the intricate dance between energy and intention. Her passion inspired a new generation of scholars who saw in the faded texts not despair, but the promise of understanding and transformation. Evan spearheaded improvements in monitoring technology, ensuring that any resurgence of dark energy would be detected well before it could threaten the world again. His innovations helped create a network of sensors that spanned the region, a silent watchfulness that was as much a part of the landscape as the ruins themselves. And Alicia, whose unwavering determination had been the heart of their journey, continued to lead with both strength and compassion. In quiet moments, when the weight of lost memories pressed against her, she would stand on the veranda and whisper a promise to the wind that no matter how deep the darkness, the light of hope would always prevail. One crisp morning, as the sun's rays transformed the sky into a canvas of gold and lavender, Alicia gathered the team on the veranda. The ancient temple, now partially restored and integrated into the research center's grounds, loomed in the distance, a symbol of the enduring connection between the past and the future. We have come a long way, Alicia said, her voice carrying over the soft murmur of the awakening world. What we have learned here, the sacrifices we made, and the bonds we forged, they're the foundation of a new era. An era where knowledge, unity, and courage protect us from the shadows that will always linger at the edges of our existence. A gentle breeze stirred, carrying with it the faint, lingering echoes of ancient chants, a reminder that the darkness was never entirely vanquished. But in that sound, there was also a harmony, a balance struck between despair and hope. It was the song of a world that had endured its trials and emerged stronger, more aware and more resolute. As the team looked out at the horizon, where the ruins met the bright promise of a new day, a shared understanding passed among them, that their journey was not an end, but a beginning, a continuous, unyielding pursuit of truth and light in a world that would forever dance with shadows. And so, with hearts emboldened by their trials and minds sharpened by the knowledge of what lay beneath the surface, they stepped forward to the new future. Earth had been transformed, its legacy rewritten. The unbroken vigil continued, not as a burden, but as a beacon of hope that would guide them and all who followed into a new dawn. In that final, quiet moment, as the sun rose higher and bathed the world in its gentle glow, Alicia whispered softly, "We are the legacy of light, and together we will always rise."